Chapter 355. Is she trying to draw a line with us? Wan Yinyang was somewhat angry, but there was more worry as she said to Shen Dongling, Dongling, could this fifth young lady be walking together with Furen and want to deal with us together with Furen? How is it possible? Shen Dongling shook her head, because of eldest sister's matter, they would not be together. But why is fifth young lady always turning a blind eye to our good intentions? Wan Yinyang paced back and forth, could it be that she looks down on our background? Speaking till here, her voice dimmed, after all she is a young lady, Yinyang. Shen Dongling put down the book and said with some headache, what are you thinking about? Fifth younger sister is not willing to associate with us, and it is definitely not because of our own reasons. I see that fifth younger sister is not warm to the entire Shen residence, and one fear that she does not want to have any connection with the second household, thus she turned a blind eye to us. Since that is the case, there is no use in fawning, and it is better to do less of such things in the future. But Wan Yinyang still wanted to say something. There is no but. Shen Dongling interrupted her words, as long as we abide by the rules and do not make any mistakes, naturally there will not be any trouble. At the other end, Jingzhe, who had returned to the room, was asking Shen Miao softly, young lady, will second Furen really drug second master? Of course. Shen Miao looked at her nails and said lightly, Ren Wanyun values children the most, and now that one son and one daughter have been lost, there is only Shen Yuanbo left. Unfortunately Shen Gui is not a kind-hearted person, so only by drugging Shen Gui would one be able to preserve Shen Yuanbo's position. But what if second Furen tells second master about this matter? Guyu had been worried about this matter. No, if Shen Gui knew that he was drugged with an infertility drug, he would definitely hate Ren Wanyun to the bones. Even if Shen Yuanbo is his only child, he would also vent his anger on Shen Yuanbo. Even if Ren Wanyun wanted Shen Yuanbo to live well, she would hide this matter to death. Perhaps Shen Gui will never discover the fact that he is unable to give birth to a son. Even if the doctor had seen it, he would never think that it was Ren Wanyun who drugged him. Then Jingzhe clenched her teeth and seemed to be hesitating before finally saying, even if second Furen secretly drugged second master and second master really could not give birth to a son, isn't there still a seventh young master? The seventh young master is still young, but when he grows up and understands, he will probably seek revenge on Miss for the sake of the second young master and eldest young mistress. To raise an enemy since young, and young lady had made such an oath. Shen Miao said in front of Ren Wanyun that she must not have any ideas on Shen Yuanbo, otherwise the heavens would strike her with thunder. Such a heavy poison oath, even Jingzhe was somewhat shocked to hear it now. Since the oath was made, I did not have any intention to hit Shen Yuanbo, Shen Miao said. Even so, seventh young master will definitely treat young lady as an enemy. Guyu reminded, there is an enemy that is always lurking in the dark, let's wait until he grows up. Shen Miao smiled. Unfortunately, Shen Yuanbo did not have the chance to grow up. Just 1 year later, there was a plague in the Ding capital and Shen Yuanbo died because of smallpox. At that time Shen Miao had already married to Fu Xiuyi, and at that time the entire Ding capital was in a state of panic. Luckily Shen Xian and the rest were fighting in the northwest region and escaped the calamity. It was still alright for the noble families in the city, but many of the poor commoners died. Shen Yuanbo was not able to escape the calamity. Shen Miao had always believed that heaven's justice was clear and karma was not good, it was just that one had to see if the retribution was enough. The sins that Shen Gui and wife did in the past lifetime was retribution on Shen Yuanbo. But the second household still had Shen Yuan and Shen Qing, and in this lifetime without Shen Yuan and Shen Qing, following the path of the previous lifetime, Shen Yuanbo would eventually lose his life. Chapter 356. Rather than being ruthless now, it was better to let them live with hope. Shen Gui thought that he still had a son, and Ren Wanyun also thought that Shen Yuanbo would replace Shen Yuan, but there would be a day when Shen Yuanbo was unable to escape the heavenly Tao's misfortune. At that time, the seeds of despair hidden in the second household would break through the soil and drown the entire second household. The second household was destined to have no descendants, but now they were filled with hope, not knowing that the footsteps of misfortune were slowly approaching them, waiting for the scythe to fall and completely reap the lives of the entire household. The chess path was already prepared and the chess pieces were moving forward step by step. Was this not good? Young lady, Mo Qing came over previously. Bai Lu walked in and said with some difficulty, he said that the banknotes that were previously given were all spent. Still need to go to Baoxiang Lu. Bai Lu was somewhat embarrassed and also somewhat did not understand. How would there be a master who would give money to the subordinate to find a young lady? Moreover, it was not an ordinary squandering. How was this letting the subordinate do the work? It was clearly giving money for the subordinate to enjoy. What was even more hateful was that Mo Qing got such a good job and every time he would put on a look of pain that made one's teeth hurt. Go and take another 500 taels of silver for him. Shin Miao said. Bai Lu revealed a pained expression and heard Shin Miao instructing, also let Mo Qing say that sentence to Lu Ying. The few maids in the room were surprised for a moment and looked curiously at Shin Miao. After all, none of them knew what that sentence that Shin Miao said was. Just as Bai Lu was about to go out, she suddenly remembered something. Young lady, previously Rong Jing Tang's Zhang Mama came over and seemed to want to inquire about the matter of Master and Furen separating from the family. Ever since that day when she heard the truth from Jing Guansheng's mouth, Luo Shuiyan and old Shin Furen had a big fight and she told the matter to Shin Xian. Naturally Shin Xian was unable to restrain his anger and immediately went to Rong Jing Tang to reason with old Furen. Luo Shuiyan wholeheartedly wanted to separate from the family and after the matter, Shin Xian was disheartened with the Shin family and naturally agreed. Even if they did not want the assets that old General Shin had left behind, they still wanted to firmly separate from the family. Old Shin Furen knew that she still needed to borrow Shin Xian's money and prestige, so in a moment of desperation, she pretended to faint from a stroke, which made one feel angry and funny at the same time. Now that Zhang Mama came to inquire about the news, naturally she wanted to probe the first household's intentions and thought that Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan only said so in a moment of anger. If she comes to ask again, tell her that we have made up our mind to separate from the family, and ask her to take good care of old madam. If old madam does not recover after a long time, it would be good to ask the elders of the family to come. The elders in the tribe had always looked down on old Shin Furen's background and when old General Shen was alive, he favored Shin Xian so naturally the elders would be biased towards Shin Xian. When the people from the clan came to separate from the family, they would definitely not let old Shin Furen get any benefits. This servant understands. Bai Lu smiled as she left the room. Shin Miao sat down in front of the table. This lifetime's journey had just begun and one had to plan so much. However, it was not an easy matter to protect the Shin family at the same time as taking revenge. It had to be done step by step. These disturbances in the Ding capital were just a joke after one's meal. After talking about it, one would laugh it off and no one would remember it. Even if it was a topic of conversation, after a few days, it would be covered by fresh matters. When people die, the lights go out. The world was just that cold. Baoxiang Lu was still as lively as usual. Recently there was a new batch of Persian dancers who were beautiful and bold. All the aristocratic young masters in the capital flocked to them like ducks. Baoxiang Lu's business was flourishing but now it was almost overcrowded. Men were greedy for novelty and liked the new and hated the old. The new dancers were very popular for a while the former top courtesans seemed to be deserted and depressed. However, among these greedy men, there was one who was different. When he walked to the door, the young lady at the door waved her handkerchief and giggled, "Master Mo, today there is no need to order young lady Lu Ying, right?" Chapter 357. Mo Qing placed the money in the young lady's hand and said, "Old rules." That young lady was half jealous and half envious as she said, "This lord is indeed a sentimental person." Luing is really a blessing that was cultivated in the previous lifetime. Finishing, she twisted her waist and went upstairs to call someone. When everyone was rushing over to the new young lady, Mo Qing was unshakable as he pointed at Lu Ying's name. Those who did not know would think that he had fallen in love with Luing, but only he and Luing knew whether he had fallen in love or not. Opposite Baoxiang Lu, at the window seat of Kuaihuo Lu, 3 people were drinking with each other. Ji Yushu pointed to Mo Qing's figure from afar as he entered Baoxiang Lu. Look, look. He went over again. What is there to look at? Gao Yang rolled his eyes at Ji Yushu. Go once every 3 days, 1 night at a time, and leave at dawn the next day without staying for a moment longer. This is something that you've memorized by heart. Is there a need to be surprised? Ji Yushu was not to be outdone as he stared back at Gao Yang. Are you stupid? We both know about this, but Xie Sanxiong has just come back, how would he know? I'm not trying to make it clear to him. Opposite of the two of them, Xie Jingxing was leaning on the sofa lazily looking at Baoxiang Lu. Today, for the first time, he did not wear purple clothes but wore a black narrow-waist long robe, making him look much colder. However, upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a travel-worn expression on his face. It was obvious that he had just returned from his journey. Xie-san, how did it go? How are those people? Gao Yang asked. They're all death warriors. If we can't get anything out of them, we'll kill them all. Xie Jingxing was a little distracted. Time is tight, we have to move quickly. What is the use of moving fast? Ji Yushu complained, the thing was not found. Shen Yuan had previously made a move and was close to Fu Xiuyi, so he might have some chips in his hands. But now that he is dead. Gao Yang muttered to himself, Fu Xiuyi should think of ways to find something from Shen Yuan's body. I want to make another trip to the Shen residence. Xie Jingxing frowned, it is impossible not to find it. Hey, forget it, let's not talk about this for now. Ji Yushu interrupted their conversation, speaking of which, we have been waiting here for so long and see this surnamed Mo running to Baoxiang Lu every 3 to 5 days. What is the meaning of this? Could it be that Miss Shen treated her servants so generously? Even the money for the servant to look for the young lady was taken out as well. For such a cushy job, to be so generous, you are even more generous than me, the shopkeeper of Feng Xian pawn shop. Have you ever seen a girl run away at dawn every day? Gao Yang looked at Ji Yushu. Why do I remember that when you look for young lady Xiaoyao, you would always stay in others' boudoir and not leave, wishing that you could stick to her side every day. The spring night is bitter and short, so how would one be so unromantic? At least you would draw her brows and talk to her. Leaving within 2 hours every time, it is like completing a task. Have your eyes grown to the sky? Xie Jingxing glanced at the two of them. Can't you see that there's someone on the other side? His eyes swept downwards and the other two were surprised for a moment. Following Xie Jingxing's gaze, they saw a green-clad male standing at the corner of the street opposite Baoxiang Lu, looking at Lu Ying's little building in a daze. Looks rather ordinary. Ji Yushu said, seeing him dressed so shabbily, one look and one can tell that he wants to go in to look for a young lady. Does he have money to satisfy his craving? What is the difference? This person. Gao Yang looked from afar, the figure is somewhat familiar, as if one had seen it somewhere. Pei Lang. Xie Jingxing said. Who is Pei Lang? Ji Yushu asked. Guang Wentang's teacher. I remember. Gao Yang also said, previously seen him at the palace banquet. But what is he doing here? Chapter 358. Teacher. Ji Yushu swallowed his saliva. Teacher also came to visit the brothel. This Guang Wentang was said to be the academy that all the noble families in the Ding capital had to enter, so how could a teacher be so morally corrupt? You visit the brothel all day, why is it not morally corrupt? Gao Yang asked Ji Yushu. Ji Yushu retorted, I do not teach students. Shut up. Xie Jingxing said, such a big person is here and both of you did not discover it. I also do not know him. Ji Yushu felt wronged, there are so many people coming and going outside Baoxiang Lu and I only pay attention to the abnormal. This gentleman did not look any different, so how would I know that he is a teacher? Gao Yang looked at Xie Jingxing, you feel that there is a problem with Pei Lang. But he is just a poor scholar. Shen Miao never do unnecessary things, there must be a reason for her subordinate to look for Lu Ying. Previously I did not understand, but after seeing him, I understand. Xie Jingxing's eyes landed on Pei Lang in the distance. You are saying. Gao Yang was deep in thought, this Shen Miao took such a big detour, and it was actually directed at Pei Lang. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile and there seemed to be a deep meaning in his eyes, one do not know why but feel that Shen Miao especially values this Pei Lang. From the things that were investigated, Pei Lang is just a poor scholar, so there must be a problem. This is not simple. Ji Yushu exclaimed, I know the reason behind it. Gao Yang and Xie Jingxing turned their heads to stare at him. Ji Yushu coughed and said with a beaming smile, too simple. I looked at the figure and saw that this person should be a jade tree with extraordinary looks and in addition he is a teacher, so he would definitely show that he is knowledgeable. Shen young lady is after all in her budding years and when such a young lady met a talented and good-looking teacher, it would be the first awakening of love and her heart would be in love. Who would have thought that the teacher is a hypocrite who visits the brothel? In a fit of anger, Shen young lady simply let her subordinate to buy that courtesan's brand. Wait. Gao Yang asked, why Shen Miao likes Pei Lang but buy Lu Ying's brand? Ji Yushu thought hard for a while before replying, most likely it is because Pei Lang could not afford to buy Lu Ying's brand, so Shen young lady let the servants buy Lu Ying's brand. Pei Lang could not even be compared to a servant, so he must be angry in his heart. Shen young lady wants to anger Pei Lang to death. The more Ji Yushu spoke, the more excited he became, until his saliva flew and he almost climbed onto the table. You all look. Pei Lang had seriously injured young Miss Shen. You're just a young lady, yet you're willing to throw away 1,000 pieces of gold for your beauty. Gao Yang held his forehead with a headache. Ji Yushu, did you listen to some inexplicable drama in the brothel again? You guys have fun, I'll leave first. Xie Jingxing stood up expressionlessly and glanced at Ji Yushu. If you are bored and the tower prison lacks people, then pack up and go over with Tai Yi. Ji Yushu immediately became like a frosted eggplant and did not make a sound. On the other side, in the Firefly hut, Mo Qing was still sitting at the table drinking tea as usual. Lu Ying had now completely given up on Mo Qing. Previously she still wanted to conquer this man, but now she did not even have any thoughts of conquering and had completely lost her temper. Thus she did not even comb her makeup and walked over to pick up the silver ingot that Mo Qing placed on the table and put it into the box. She then sat opposite Mo Qing and poured a cup of tea to take a sip before saying in a lukewarm manner, many thanks to gentleman Mo for supporting Lu Ying as usual, so that Lu Ying would not be unable to eat in such a bad time. When the other young ladies were snatched away by the new Persian dancers, only Mo Qing continued to support her. The young ladies in the building were extremely envious and jealous of Lu Ying, but did not know that in Lu Ying's eyes, Mo Qing was just an eccentric person. Chapter 359. Most likely Mo Qing liked to take the money and stare blankly in the brothel. Lu Ying also did not intend to chat with Mo Qing. This Mo Qing had come over so many times but he never spoke a word to her. If it was not that he would speak to the young lady downstairs, Lu Ying would think that Mo Qing was a mute. But today, Mo Qing had spoken to her for the first time. Mo Qing said, "It is not me." She was too surprised that Lu Ying could only stare at him. "Ah. The one who gave you the money is not me." Mo Qing said. Lu Ying was puzzled, "What money?" "My master wants me to come here every 3 days to look for you and give you the money and do nothing." This was most likely the longest sentence that Imo Qing had said since he came to Bao Xiang Lu, but when the words were spoken, Lu Ying's eyes suddenly became vigilant. She stood up. Who is your master? Imo Qing shook his head. Cannot say. You. Lu Ying glared at him. Master said that after a few more days, she will come and see you. Imo Qing said, do not receive other guests for the time being. Lu Ying smiled. Eldest brother, I do not know who your master is and do not know what he wants to do, but I am a young lady of Bao Xiang Lu, and now that the economy is so bad, I am not the top card that was just made famous. If I do not receive other guests, what would I eat or drink? You will support me. Imo Qing did not say anything. Seeing that Imo Qing did not say anything, Lu Ying became even angrier and a nameless fire rose in her heart. At this time, no matter if it was sincere or not, other males would still say a few comforting words, I will support you. Even if it was to deceive others, no one would take anyone's words seriously in the brothel. This Imo Qing was good, he was simply a blockhead and loved to be serious, not even willing to say a few good words to deceive others. Once he got angry, he wanted to coax others, but just as he opened his mouth, Lu Ying became silent again. Imo Qing was indeed not a person in the brothel, and he himself said that he was only acting on his master's orders. Thinking of this, she felt that it was meaningless to ask him about these things. Imo Qing saw Lu Ying's expression changing and was somewhat baffled. He hesitated for a moment before saying the words that Shin Miao did not instruct him to say. He said, my master is a good person, you, don't be afraid. Lu Ying was surprised for a moment and looked at Imo Qing, but Imo Qing lowered his head to drink his tea. Inexplicably, Lu Ying's mood became better and she said, why should I believe you? Imo Qing, that night, there were no stars and no moon. Shin Miao stayed in Luo Shuiyan's room and chatted with Luo Shuiyan before preparing to return to her courtyard. On the way, Jingzhi told Shin Miao about the news that she had inquired during the day. Young lady, one heard that the Jing family will set off for Suzhou this afternoon, and before leaving, they took away all the valuable furnishings in Rong Jing Tang's side courtyard. This is really like a robber's action. Old Furen was so angry that she almost had a stroke again. This stroke again was said with a hint of mockery. Everyone knew that when old Shin Furen was flustered and exasperated, she would involuntarily have a stroke. But now it could be considered that she had met her match. The shameless one had met an even more shameless one. Speaking of which, one really admired the Jing family's face. To be able to take away Rong Jing Tang's things with such ease, it was really strange to the extreme. One did not think that the Jing family would speak in such a dignified manner and solemnly vow to seek an explanation for Biao young lady, but now they returned to Suzhou with their tails between their legs, so Biao young lady did not care. Knowing that Biao young lady would not have a good ending in the Sun family, but did not think of any way at all. Originally they said it so ruthlessly, but it was only to ask for more money. Jingzhi said. Commoners do not fight with officials. Shin Miao's lips slightly hooked up. One think that the Jing family also know that they have caused a big disaster. Not a good person. Jingzhi's lips twitched. Shin Miao declined to comment. The Jing family rushed back to Suzhou through the night, but how could they rush back in time? Sun Tianzheng was not a soft persimmon. Initially when Shin Qiu had an accident, Jing Chu Chu escaped, but the rest of the Jing family did not escape. Sun Tianzheng was never a soft-hearted person, so no one knew what happened on the way back to Suzhou. Just as they walked to the courtyard, Shin Miao was about to push the door open to enter when she suddenly paused and swept a glance at the window. Jingzhi. Shin Miao said, go and boil the water first. I want to bathe. Make it hotter. Jingzhi was startled for a moment before nodding her head in agreement. Shin Miao pushed the door open and walked in. She walked past the outer hall, past the folding screen and walked into her own boudoir before closing the door. The light of the oil lamp swayed slightly, and one could see a person sitting crookedly in front of the table. His robe seemed to be flowing dark gold, making the darkness in the room shine brightly. He propped his head up with one hand and the other hand was flipping through the books on Shin Miao's table in boredom. When he heard movement, he casually turned his head and revealed a handsome face with red lips and white teeth. "Why did you return so late?" Xie Jingxing was somewhat dissatisfied. "I did not seem to have invited you." Shin Miao looked at him calmly. "Little Marquis Xie. I waited for you for a long time." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "I am already hungry." Shin Miao said, "Get lost." Chapter 360. Get lost. Hearing that, Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up and turned his head to look at Shin Miao with interest. "Long time no see. Your temper is getting more and more irritable." Shin Miao sat down in front of the table and said coldly, "You still like to come uninvited as usual." If Xie Jingxing was seen in her room, one did not know how much trouble it would cause. But this person always liked to do such things, as if there was danger in his bones. Shin Miao had already decided to stay away from Xie Jingxing as the other person had too many secrets, and now Xie Jingxing came over himself. How could she not be angry? "Passing by this place and conveniently came over to see you." Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders and changed to a more comfortable position. Today he was wearing plain clothes with a white collar. It was the season of snow, but because of his outstanding brows, the room was filled with the feeling of spring. He stroked his chin and said, "There is one more thing to ask you." "Speak." Shin Miao was not willing to say a word more to him. When Xie Jingxing saw Shin Miao's attitude, he was not annoyed and said, "Is there anyone in the residence that Shin Yuan trusts?" Hearing that, Shin Miao looked at Xie Jingxing with some surprise. She did not think that the person that Xie Jingxing wanted to ask was Shin Yuan. Even though she was not clear of Xie Jingxing's purpose, she still said, "No." Shin Yuan's return to the capital was short and he is not close to the people in the residence. "Why did you ask him?" "Just came over from his courtyard." Xie Jingxing said lazily, "Did not find anything so came over to ask." Shin Miao's eyes drooped as she pondered. Could it be that Xie Jingxing wanted to find something at Shin Yuan's place but could not find it, so he thought that Shin Yuan had passed the thing to someone he trusted, thus he inquired from her. "What exactly are you looking for?" Shin Miao asked. "Is it the same as the thing in Prince Yu Residence's secret chamber?" When the words were said, the room suddenly became quiet for a moment. For a moment, Shin Miao could feel the biting cold air that burst out from Xie Jingxing's side. But that dangerous atmosphere only lasted for a moment and very quickly Xie Jingxing laughed. When he laughed, he was as elegant as jade, but that pair of peach blossom eyes could not conceal the sharpness. Xie Jingxing did not answer Shin Miao's words but asked, "These days you are also living well. One heard that the second household of the Shin family is about to be defeated. Little Marquis knows the matters of the Shin residence like the back of his hand. If one did not know, one would think that you are from the Shin residence." Shin Miao ridiculed. Xie Jingxing spread out his hands. "No choice, the Shin residence's guards are like decorations and the things that happened were interesting, so it would be hard to not know." He sized up Shin Miao. "It is just that I have underestimated your ruthlessness. You can give it a try too." Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile. "I don't have that much time." "It sounds like you are very busy." Shin Miao stared at him. "But you have so much free time to visit other people's mansions." When she said this, she showed a little anger. Xie Jingxing could always easily draw out the little emotions in her heart. If Jingzhe, Guyu, and the rest were to see this, they would definitely be shocked by Shin Miao's current expression. Because it had been a long time since Shin Miao had revealed such frank emotions. Whether it was anger or annoyance, these were all things that the previous Shin Miao would have. Xie Jingxing said, "Young lady's temper is always so heavy." Shin Miao said in a bad mood, "The questions have already been asked and you are still not leaving?" Xie Jingxing stood up and patted his clothes. He really opened the back window and planned to leave from the window when he suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at her strangely before asking, "Almost forgot to ask you. Shen Miao, do you admire Pei Lang? Shen Miao, before she could speak, she saw Xie Jingxing looking at her from head to toe with disdain in his eyes. It should also be useless. His figure disappeared in a blink of an eye. Chapter 361. This bastard. Shen Miao almost ground her teeth. But one saw Jing Zhe knocking on the door from the outside. Young lady, the water has started to boil. This servant will help you put in the spices. Upon entering, she asked curiously, why is young lady standing in front of the window? Be careful not to catch a cold. Shen Miao withdrew her gaze. Nothing, I just chased away a wild cat. A wild cat. Jing Zhe smiled. It is common for wild cats to appear in this season, but they only disturb one's dreams. One will chase them out tomorrow to save trouble. It is better to add arsenic. Shen Miao said, clean death. Jing Zhe was somewhat puzzled. At the other end of the Shen residence, Wan Yinyang's eyes were filled with worry and seemed to be somewhat resentful as she said to Shen Dongling, one do not know what fifth young lady said to Furen that day, but these days the servants in Kai Yun Yuan said that Furen's illness is getting better day by day. Now that he recognized him, he didn't throw a tantrum. Now that he was able to do things, he even asked the servant beside him to cook porridge for his master. It seemed like he wanted to regain his master's favor. If that day really comes, I'm afraid that it will be another day of suffering for us. Wan Yinyang was somewhat complaining. It seems that fifth young lady really want to help Furen and even treat Furen's illness. Shen Dongling was combing her long hair in front of the table. When she let her long hair down, it just so happened that she was facing the light, and the pale color on her face eased up a bit. Her face became even sharper, and her eyes were big. She was a vivid little beauty. She said, Yinyang is worrying too much. No matter how great fifth sister's ability is, it is impossible for her to bring the dying back to life. It seems that madam has always been pretending to be crazy. Fifth younger sister said something to her and made her think it through and stop pretending. What? Wan Yinyang was shocked. Linger, you said that Furen had been acting crazy all along. Then for so long, master has been taking care of us. Isn't it all seen by madam? Once madam has the chance, she will definitely not let us off. What's there to worry about, aunt? Shen Dongling casually combed her hair with a silver comb as she said, because of Dejie and second brother's matter, father already looks down on Furen. Even if madam really woke up, father would at most be tolerant towards her on the surface, but in his heart, he would definitely be disgusted. It is impossible for Furen to regain her previous position and Furen herself knows this. Yinyang can relax. Wan Yinyang was puzzled, since Furen knew that master would not forgive her, why did she not continue to pretend to be crazy? What did fifth miss say to her that made her change her mind? Madam has nothing but seventh younger brother now. Fifth younger sister is probably making a fuss about seventh younger brother's matter. Yinyang must also work hard to give father a son. No matter if it's a bastard son or a legitimate son, as long as you give birth to a son, you will be able to stand firm here in the future. No one will dare to step on your head. Wan Yinyang smiled bitterly. How would she not want to give birth to a son? In the early years, she was completely suppressed by Ren Wanyun, and if she did not give birth to Shen Dongling who was a daughter, both mother and daughter would not be able to live until now. Now Ren Wanyun was crazy, but Shen Gui had always been fickle in relationships and she was not a young female, so how could she keep Shen Gui's heart? How could they coincidentally give birth to a son? As her thoughts ran wild, Wan Yinyang diverted the topic. What is the use of saying all these? Linga might as well guess what fifth young lady is trying to do. Helping Furen is the same as going against us. That might not be so. Shen Dongling shook her head. Fifth younger sister is not a simple person and currently our position in the second household is not high. Even so, it is already very good. In short, do not get involved in these matters and live your own life, otherwise one would accidentally invite trouble upon oneself. Chapter 362. Wan Yinyang listened with fear and trepidation and asked tentatively, "So, do not look, do not ask and do not speak." Shen Dongling looked at herself in the mirror. "Let nature take its course. There will be a day when we can live a good life." In the Shen residence, not only the people of Kai Yun Yuan were discussing about the matter, in Qiu Shui Yuan, Ren Wanyun's name was also mentioned. Chen Roqiu was wearing a plain white robe as she sat on the bed and said, "Second Sa's health is getting better." "Master, what did second older brother's side say?" Shen Wan rubbed his forehead. Because of Shen Yuan's matter, the colleagues in court were quite critical of the Shen family. Even he was implicated and these days were not easy. He shook his head. Second older brother did not mention about this matter. Even if second Sa is really well, the second household would only be left with seventh older brother. Chen Roqiu said, "Second older brother's temperament is. In the future when each household brings concubines back, one fear." Speaking till here, there was a feeling of the fox grieving for the rabbit's death. The difference between her and Ren Wanyun was that Chen Roqiu was able to firmly grasp Shen Wan's heart, but the third household did not have any sons, and now that Shen Yuan was dead, in old Shen Furen's eyes, one feared that she was anxious to let her two sons bear branches and disperse leaves. Shen Gui's side was unfilial and was not a devoted person, but on Shen Wan's side, if he was pressed, Chen Roqiu could not help but panic. How long could a man's favor last? But her stomach did not live up to expectations. Shen Wan noticed that Chen Roqiu's expression was ugly and asked puzzledly, "What is wrong with you? Is your body not feeling well?" Chen Roqiu forced a smile and shook her head, "Just thought of eldest brother and eldest Sa's matter." After a pause, Chen Roqiu then said, "Eldest brother and eldest Sa have already decided to separate and even threatened to invite the elders of the family. One fear that they are not afraid of carrying the charge of being unfilial. This matter was not handled properly by mother." Shen Wan said, "Being held by others, and if eldest brother was angered, he would mention the matter of mother framing Chio'er and the entire capital would poke our backbones." Chen Roqiu nodded her head, "Correct. Most likely it is because of this point that eldest brother and eldest Sa are so sure." Chen Roqiu said, "It has been peaceful for so many years. Why is there a need to separate at this juncture?" She could not help but think of Shen Miao. Ever since Shen Miao's temperament changed, many things in the Shen residence had quietly changed. In the past Shen Xian and wife treated the rest of the Shen family well, but that was because Shen Miao treated them well. Now that Shen Miao showed her dissatisfaction, Shen Xian and wife's attitude immediately changed. Shen Wan sighed as Chen Roqiu asked, "Master, is there any leeway to turn this matter around?" Shen Wan shook his head. "If it were us, we wouldn't be able to accept it either." Big Brother and his family were people who couldn't tolerate a grain of sand in their eyes, and the one they valued the most was Xiaowu. The Jing family and mother conspired against Chio'er and Xiaowu, which was a taboo of eldest brother. They were already being merciful by only separating from the family. If it was eldest brother's temper in the past, I'm afraid he would have flipped this Shen residence upside down. But Chen Roqiu said, "It's not a good thing for us to separate now." Shen Wan looked out of the window. "Now that the second household has suffered heavy losses, second older brothers and my career are blocked. In the past we could still rely on eldest brother's influence, but once the family is separated, everyone would know that the Shen family is not in harmony, and to curry favor with eldest brother, they would not associate with us. The Shen family's road would only be more difficult. Not only that, the money in the public purse." Chen Roqiu reminded. In the past Shen Xian's rewards were numerous, but he was unable to spend it all year round in the northwest region, so he handed it all over to the public purse. Old Shen Furen spent money extravagantly and Ren Wanyun occasionally had to subsidize it, so he lived like this. Now that the family was separated, even if Shen Xian did not want the assets that the old general left behind, their days would only get more difficult. Chapter 363. If it is only like this then it is fine. Shen Wan's eyes flashed a trace of gloominess. After the separation of the family, with eldest brother's military strength and reputation, he would only get better and at the end he would suppress us. Comparing the two powers, one would have to reach this step. Chen Rochio's heart was shocked when she heard it. She had been married to the Shen residence for so many years and naturally knew of the Shen residence's appearance. Shen Xian and wife were not in the residence all year round so they did not know, but she and Ren Wanyun were well aware of it. In this Shen residence, Shen Xian and Shen Gui brothers did not crawl out from the same mother's womb so naturally it was not sincere. The better Shen Xian lived, the worse the other two households would be. There would be a day when everyone would be in opposition, but one did not think that this situation would come so quickly. Master, even if it is for Yuer, one cannot let us be suppressed. Chen Rochio massaged his shoulders, but how to deal with them? Now that eldest brother is wary of us, it would not be that easy to take action. Shen Wan shook his head, moreover his soldiers are not ordinary so it would be harder to find loopholes. One must wait for an opportunity. Shen Wan said, the most urgent matter is to find a good family for Yuer. Pay attention these days. Chen Rochio probed, Master, His Highness Prince Ding, first one must not have any ideas on Prince Ding. Shen Wan said sharply, just after the matter of Yuan, the people in court are afraid of getting involved with the Shen family and one need to pay more attention to the princes. If one were to think of Prince Ding at this time, Prince Ding would not be happy. Chen Rochio nodded her head, this concubine understands. Master should also rest early. On the morning of the second day, Shen Miao had just eaten when she saw Shuang Jiang panting as she ran in. Upon entering the room, she said, Young lady. Something happened. Speak slowly if there is something to say. Why are you so anxious? Guyu reprimanded. Shuang Jiang stuck out her tongue but still could not hold it back and spilled everything out. A few days ago, did the Jing family not set off back to Suzhou? Today the officials from that side said that the Jing family met with bandits on the way back and were all killed by the bandits. Knowing that the Jing family and Old Furen have some relations, the officials then came to inform. Shuang Jiang patted her chest and said with lingering fear, now this bandit is getting more and more rampant. They dared to kill people in broad daylight and did not leave a single person alive. If one knew it was like this, the Jing family would regret coming to the Ding capital. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down. Whether the Jing family was silenced by bandits or not, it would depend on one's thoughts. But Shen Miao knew that Sun Tianzheng's methods had always been swift and decisive, just like in the court. This matter started because of Jing Chu Chu and Sun Kai Nan lost his life. How could Sun Tianzheng be willing? Shen Miao believed that if it was possible, Sun Tianzheng could not wait to silence the entire Shen family. But the Shen family wasn't the Jing family. The Jing family would still have the same ending as in the previous lifetime, losing their lives because of Jing Chu Chu's greed. Now that Jing Chu Chu was still in Sun Tianzheng's hands, Sun Tianzheng would not let Jing Chu Chu die easily. To live in despair like this was perhaps more painful than death. But this had nothing to do with her anymore. Shen Miao said to Guyu, what about the prepared things? Guyu said, it is in the chest, but... Guyu was somewhat hesitant, young lady, you really want, go and get it. Shen Miao interrupted her words. After an hour, 4 people walked out of the western courtyard side door of the Shen residence. Among the 3 of them, the leader was a young gentleman with delicate features. He was wearing a moon-white robe and a hat, and could be considered as an elegant gentleman. It was just that he was a little short but he was somewhat adorable like a carved jade. His pair of bright eyes were rarely clear. With this kind of looks, he would be sought after even in a small brothel. Chapter 364. Following closely behind him were 2 people dressed as attendants. But when he walked, he was a little clumsy and awkward. Behind the follower was a guard. Compared to the 3 of them, he was much taller. Do not be afraid. Shen Miao said, be more courageous and do not give yourself away. These three people were not others but Shin Miao, Jingzhe, Guyu, and Mo Qing. Jingzhe and Guyu were not used to wearing male's clothing, so they had a sullen face and were somewhat afraid, but Shin Miao was very calm, which made Mo Qing's heart have some misgivings. However, she did not know that when she was a hostage in the Qin state, she was teased by the royal family. They made her dress up as a man for several months. Now that he was acting, he looked very lively. When the three of them boarded the carriage, Mo Qing personally drove the carriage and Guyu asked Shin Miao, "Young lady, are we really going to Baoxianglu?" "Of course." "But," Guyu said, "we have words that cannot be said outside. If someone sees young lady visiting a brothel." She could not continue because Guyu did not know what would happen when a female visited a brothel. Baoxianglu is a business place, and a business place only needs to pay money. Those who visit the brothel do not care about etiquette and morals, and it is originally a place to indulge in debauchery. No one would notice if they were to put on a show. Jingzhe and Guyu looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Shin Miao's ideas were very big, and once she decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull her back. Moreover, there would always be all kinds of high-sounding reasons. Now that he had come this far, he could only wait and see. In the elegant room of Kuai Huolu, someone lifted the curtain and walked in. Ji Yushu said, "Third older brother Xia, you came just in time. There is something to tell you, Prince Ding." "Huh?" Gao Yang suddenly exclaimed. His hand that was holding the wine cup paused as he muttered to himself, "Why is it different this time?" "What's different?" Xie Jingxing said as he sat down by the window. He poured himself a cup of tea and followed Gao Yang's gaze. Below Baoxianglu, a horse carriage stopped and a few people came down. The person in the lead was Mo Qing. Behind Mo Qing, there were 3 youths that followed. In the past, the one with the surname Mo always came and went alone. Why are there so many people here today? Is this also Shin Miao's order? Gao Yang propped his chin up and sized him up. "Let me see." Ji Yushu stretched his neck to take a look, and a flash of inspiration appeared. Could it be that Shin young lady is actually using money to reward servants who do well? If the servants did a good job, they would be rewarded with a day trip to Baoxianglu. I also want to be a servant in Shin young lady's residence. Step aside. Gao Yang pushed Ji Yushu's head away and said, "Why do I feel that these few people look somewhat familiar?" Before he finished his words, he saw Xie Jingxing spurt out a mouthful of tea. "Third brother." Ji Yushu, who was sprayed all over, jumped up in a flurry and said angrily as he tidied up his clothes, "What are you doing?" Xie Jingxing ignored him and stared at the few people downstairs in surprise. They actually came by themselves. "Myself?" Gao Yang caught on to the meaning behind his words and looked down carefully. When he saw it clearly, he almost fell over on his back. Who else could it be if it was not Shin Miao, who was the leader that was carved from jade? Under the heavens, there were really females who dressed as males to visit brothels. If one did not see it with one's own eyes, Gao Yang would have thought that such things would only appear in dramas. Shin Miao followed Mo Qing into Baoxianglu. When the young lady at the door saw Mo Qing, she went up to greet him with a smile. "Lord Mo, it is better to pick young lady Luing." Mo Qing nodded his head. That young lady then seemed to notice the few people behind Mo Qing and hesitated for a moment. "These few." Chapter 365. Together with me. Mo Qing said. That young lady was surprised for a moment before thinking of something and looked at Mo Qing mischievously. One did not think that Master Mo would have this kind of taste. No matter, the more people there are, the livelier it is. When Jingzhe and Guyu heard it, their faces immediately turned red, and Mo Qing also felt somewhat uncomfortable. The calmest person in the group was only Shin Miao. That young lady led them to Lu Ying's little building. Mo Qing had almost become a frequent visitor of Baoxiang Lu, and there was no young lady who did not know of him, thus it was not strange at all. It was just that it was rare to see such delicate and pretty gentlemen like Shen Miao and the rest, especially Shen Miao, who looked like she was carved from jade. From time to time there would be young ladies who would look over with a smile. When they reached Lu Ying's little building, the young lady who led the way knocked on the door and spoke. "Lu Ying, Master Mo is here to see you." Finishing, she then said to Mo Qing and the rest, "This servant will go down first." Mo Qing pushed the door open and walked in. There was a female sitting in front of the dressing mirror with clothes loosely draped over her body, and her black hair was like a waterfall as she was dressing up in front of the mirror. Hearing the commotion, she did not even turn her head back as she said, "You came early today." Jing Zhe and Guyu looked at Mo Qing strangely before Mo Qing coughed twice. "Not only me." Lu Ying's hand that was dressing paused, and when she turned her head over, she was first startled when she saw Shen Miao and the rest before a trace of anger climbed up her pretty face. "What is the meaning of this?" Not waiting for Mo Qing to finish, Lu Ying sneered, "If you want to play like this, it is possible, but you have to pay twice the amount of money." When the words were said, not only Jing Zhe and Gu Yu, even Shen Miao looked at Mo Qing strangely. Mo Qing was somewhat embarrassed as he did not know why Lu Ying, who treated him with a much better attitude a few days ago, flew into a rage today, and that kind of cold alienation started to appear again. "Young lady Lu Ying, this one is Mo Qing's master." Shen Miao opened her mouth to break the deadlock and smiled gently. "We are not here to play today." Jing Zhe and Guyu wanted to cover their eyes and could not wait to pretend that they did not know. Hearing the word mistress, Lu Ying was stunned and her eyes vigilantly sized up Shen Miao from head to toe. Shen Miao walked over and Jing Zhe and Guyu quickly moved the stool in front of the table closer to Lu Ying and waited for Shen Miao to sit down. "You are the one who let Mo Qing come to my shop every day?" Lu Ying asked. Shen Miao nodded. Lu Ying supported her chin with one hand and her gaze suddenly became flirtatious. "This servant does not understand gentlemen's actions. Could it be that you have fallen in love with me?" Mo Qing looked up at the sky. Lu Ying was after all a female in a brothel, and when she did such a brothel, it could be said that she had reached the point of perfection. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu revealed a look of disdain. Shen Miao looked at her. "What does young lady Lu Ying think?" Lu Ying carefully sized up Shen Miao and her gaze paused for a moment before suddenly smiling. "This young lady wants to play the fake phoenix trick in the play script?" She actually saw through Shen Miao's female identity. Shen Miao was not surprised. She was born delicate and pretty, and when she was dressed up as a male, her skin was as white as jade and her brows were similar. She was excessively delicate when she walked, so when one looked seriously, naturally it would not escape the eyes of others. "I want to redeem your freedom," Shen Miao said. Lu Ying could not laugh anymore. She had been sold to Baoxiang Lu for quite some time, and now naturally it could not be compared to that time when she was extremely popular. There were fewer and fewer people asking about her, not to mention spending a large sum of money to redeem her freedom. Lu Ying does not understand young ladies' meaning. "I was fortunate enough to obtain a handkerchief, and it was a rare double-sided embroidery. There were only a few dozen people in the entire country who knew how to do double-sided embroidery." Shen Miao said. "After many inquiries, one came to know that it was done by young lady Lu Ying." "You?" Lu Ying's hands tightened. "How did you know that it was done by me?" Shen Miao waved her hands. "It is not important how I know. The important thing is that I have an embroidery workshop and lack an embroidery lady. Does young lady Lu Ying have the interest to manage the embroidery workshop for me?" Lu Ying looked at her incredulously and suddenly laughed like a flower. "Young lady, could it be that you want me to turn over a new leaf?" Jing Zhe and Gu Yu were somewhat dissatisfied with Lu Ying's attitude at this moment, and Mo Qing also slightly frowned. How many prostitutes longed to wash themselves clean, and Lu Ying was still young. If she washed herself clean, she might have a good future. "I was sold to this place from the start." Lu Ying's face was frivolous. "What I learned is bedroom skills and only know how to serve and please a male. Young lady, let me manage the embroidery workshop and sell hard labor." I am not able to live through that kind of bitter days. Not afraid that I will collapse the embroidery workshop. Shen Miao stared at her and smiled gently. Whether it collapses or not is my matter, but whether to do it or not is your matter. She played it down. It is just that. This matter is dispensable to me, but to you, it is the only way to leave this place. There are thousands of people in the world and tens of thousands of industries. Everyone has their own way of living. To me, one do not feel that a female in a brothel is lower than others, but the world's view is so. Shen Miao said, just like my garde-mo. She is also a slave, but no one would look down on her. My personal maids, some people would even envy them. The world is like this and people are divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Who would not want to be a person above others and who would want to be ridiculed by others every day? Chapter 366. There are thousands of people in the world, thousands of industries, and everyone has their own way of living. To me, I don't think that the women in the brothel are lower than others, but that's how the world sees it. Shen Miao said, just like my garde-mo, he is also a slave, but no one would look down on him. My personal maids, some people would even envy them. The world is like this, and people are divided into different ranks. Who doesn't want to be above others? Who wants to be ridiculed by others every day? You. What Luing hated the most was that people would talk about her background, and when she heard that, she was even angrier. Shen Miao said, you might as well consider it. Since young lady looks down on people who have fallen into prostitution, why is there a need to say such words to me? Luing was not angry but laughed instead. I look down on people who are willing to be reduced to prostitution. Shen Miao stood up and said, after a few days, garde-mo will come over again. Young lady Luing need not be anxious to answer me. But, using one's looks to please others will never end well. Shen Miao gave Mo Qing a look and Mo Qing quickly took out an ingot of silver and placed it on the table. Luing swept a glance at him and there was some anger on her face. Mo Qing was also very embarrassed. Shen Miao did not intend to stay long and nodded her head to Luing before getting up to leave. One did not know what Luing looked like behind him. When they were out of Bao Xiang Lu's doors, Jingzhe then said indignantly, Gu. Young master had good intentions to redeem her but did not think that she would not appreciate it. My good intentions are not rewarded. Mo Qing wanted to say something but finally endured it. Gu asked, young lady, are we going back now? Shen Miao did not answer and her body did not move. Gu found it somewhat strange and saw that Shen Miao seemed to be looking at something. Following her gaze, she saw that the place she was looking at was the opposite corner of the street and there was a green-clad person standing there, looking at the little building of Bao Xiang Lu. Before Gu Yu was able to speak, she saw Shen Miao lifting her feet and walking over. Under the eaves, the green-robed man stood straight, his eyes staring in the direction of the Luing small building. He was so engrossed that he did not even know when someone had come to his side. A light cough interrupted his train of thought. He saw 4 people standing in front of him. The young man in the lead was dressed in a moon-white robe. He had delicate features and looked like he was carved out of jade. Who knew which family he was from? At this moment, she looked at him with a faint smile on her lips. Pei Lang was stunned. He felt that this young man looked familiar. The young man nodded at him. Mr. Pei. Shen Miao. Pei Lang's eyes widened slightly. He looked at the attendants and guards behind Shen Miao and looked at Shen Miao again. Most likely he was somewhat shocked and said, You. Why are you dressed like this? It was not rare for a female to dress up as a male. In Ming Qi, many young ladies would occasionally dress up as a male for convenience, and when they dress up, they would have a different kind of beauty. But Shen Miao. Pei Lang looked at the handsome youth in front of him and did not know what to say for a moment. I just came out from Bao Xiang Lu, Shen Miao said. Pei Lang coughed all of a sudden, and his face turned red. It was not uncommon for a woman to dress up as a man, but this was the first time he had heard of a woman dressed up as a man visiting a brothel. But Shin Miao still had a very magnanimous look, without a trace of shyness. Shin Miao suddenly took a step forward and moved closer to Pei Lang. With a pa sound, she opened the fan in her hands and covered both of their faces. She softly said at the other end of the fan, "Everyone said that the young ladies of Baoxiang Lu are the most beautiful in the world, so I specially went for a stroll. Recently there are many new Persian dancers, and each of them are incomparably fragrant." Even if Pei Lang was calm and composed outside, and was able to deal with high officials and noble people with ease, but facing Shin Miao's slightly ambiguous actions, he was somewhat at a loss. Not to mention that Shin Miao was talking about all these messy things, it made him suddenly have an illusion, as if the person in front of him was really that noble gentleman who walked on horseback and slept with flowers and willows, and was discussing with him which family's dancers were more beautiful. Chapter 367. Nonsense. Remembering his identity as a teacher, Pei Lang squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. Shin Miao gently smiled and her eyes curved like a crescent moon, almost like an orchid. She said, "But I have ordered young Lady Lu Ying's card." As soon as these words came out, Pei Lang's body stiffened. Shin Miao kept her folding fan and looked at him with a smile. "I see that gentleman Pei has been looking at Lu Ying's little building for a long time. Is it that you are also yearning for young Lady Lu Ying?" Pei Lang stared at Shin Miao and his calm expression suddenly turned fierce. Shin Miao remained unmoved and continued to smile happily as she pointed to Kuai Hu Lu. "Since Mr. Pei is also interested in young Lady Lu Ying, why not go in with me for a cup of wine and chat about beauties?" Her actions were obviously frivolous, but there was a kind of irresistible majesty about her. She folded her fan horizontally in front of her chest and went upstairs on her own. She left a sentence from afar, "Good wine and chatting with beautiful women is the happiest thing in the world." Even though Jing Zhe, Gu Yu, and Mo Qing trio did not understand the meaning of Shin Miao's words, they had never refuted Shin Miao's decisions and immediately followed in. Pei Lang stood there alone. After a moment of hesitation, he made up his mind and followed her in. At the window seat upstairs, Ji Yu Shu suddenly jumped up. "Look! I already said that Shin young lady admires that Pei Lang and went in such a big circle to pick young Lady Lu Ying's name. It was all so that she could speak with Pei Lang today." Gao Yang ignored him and secretly guessed, just now she used the fan to cover her face. What did she say to Pei Lang? Gao Yang shook his head. "She used the fan to cover it." "Could it be that she knows that you can read lips?" When he said that, Gao Yang looked at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he did not agree or disagree. Speaking of which, just now the action of Shin young lady waving the fan was so elegant that it was even more outstanding than me. Ji Yu Shu sighed. How could such a beautiful person fancy a poor scholar? Even if you follow me, it's still better than that pretty boy who can't even afford to visit a brothel. Xie Jingxing stood up and Ji Yu Shu asked, "Where are you going?" "Of course it's to listen to what they have to say." Xie Jingxing smiled meaningfully. "I want to see what kind of chess piece Pei Lang is." In the elegant room of Kuai Hu Lu, Mo Qing stood by the door while Jing Zhe and Gu Yu stood on both sides with their heads lowered, as if they did not exist. At the table, Shin Miao was pouring wine. The wine was Lu wine. Its color was like amber and it smelled fragrant. This wine wasn't intoxicating. As long as one's alcohol tolerance wasn't too bad, drinking a little would be fine. Shin Miao poured 2 cups and her posture when pouring the wine was very elegant. Her fingers grabbed the handle of the wine pot and when the crystal clear wine was poured into the small jade cup, the sound was very pleasing to the ear. Pei Lang watched helplessly as Shin Miao pushed a cup of wine in front of him and said with a smile, "Gentlemen, please drink." Shin Miao. Pei Lang directly called her by her name and his expression had not eased since he entered. He said, "What exactly do you want to do?" "Mr. Pei is actually so anxious to talk about beauties without wine. Isn't it like a cow chewing peonies?" Shen Miao looked at him calmly. Pei Lang was dumbfounded by her words. He had stayed in Guangwen for several years and the people that he met were all respectful to him. Even the most mischievous student would not speak to him in such a frivolous tone. If it was other people, it would be all right, but it was Shen Miao. Pei Lang always felt that Shen Miao was not a frivolous person, and speaking like this made him unable to figure out the other party's background. Seeing that Pei Lang did not speak for a long time, Shen Miao gently laughed. She said, "Just joking with Mr. Pei. Why is Mr. Pei so nervous?" Chapter 368. When she said those words, her eyes were clear, but there seemed to be some mischievousness. It was clearly the appearance of an innocent young female, but in a moment there was a kind of unknowingly charming charm. Pei Lang's gaze slightly paused. "This wine is Lu wine." Shen Miao picked up the wine cup and raised it towards Pei Lang. Pei Lang's expression suddenly changed, but Shen Miao did not seem to notice his expression and said slowly, "The wine brewed in the Luqi region is also amber in color. The Lu wine in Kuaihu Lu must have been transported over from the Luqi region." Pei Lang looked at her and suddenly picked up the wine cup on the table and drank the wine in one gulp. "This wine is not intoxicating," Shen Miao said with a smile, "otherwise if others see it, they would think that Teacher Pei is a wine jar." Her tone was coquettish, but her words made Pei Lang's palms slightly moist. She said, "Speaking of which, the people of Lu are good at drinking wine and drink from jars." Just now Teacher Pei's manner was somewhat like a Lu person. Pei Lang pursed his lips and did not speak, but his gentle eyes were somewhat distorted. Shen Miao supported her cheek with one hand and her face was slightly flushed from the wine. Even if she was not intoxicated, there was a faint blush on her face, and when she squinted her eyes, she looked like a crabapple sleeping in spring. But because she was dressed as a male, it was refreshing and pretty, and there was a different kind of charm. She said, "I remember that 10 years ago, there was a prefectural magistrate of Lu who also seemed to have the surname Pei. If one did not know, one would think that Teacher Pei and that person were from the same family." Pei Lang suddenly placed the wine cup on the table, and at the same time, Mo Qing glared and his right hand pressed on the sword at his waist. Unfortunately, that prefectural magistrate Pei's residence was involved in an old matter of the previous dynasty, and his entire family was beheaded by His Majesty. In the entire residence, the males were all executed and the daughters were exiled to be prostitutes for officials. Shen Miao could not stop laughing. One heard that prefectural magistrate Pei's residence had a pair of outstanding children and they were still young but died in this storm. Pei Lang's lips were slightly trembling as he asked word by word, "Who exactly are you?" "Shoo!" Shen Miao gestured for her to keep quiet and drank another cup of wine. Her snow-white face flushed red as she said, "Actually, I was fortunate to hear of a secret. Seeing that Gentleman Pei is also surnamed Pei, there is no harm in sharing it with Gentleman Pei. That prefectural magistrate Pei's residence had the ability to send a pair of children to escape and avoid disaster. Unfortunately, the officials were hot on their heels, so they could only protect one person. Hence, prefectural magistrate Pei managed to protect his son, but his daughter was captured by the officials." She regretfully shook her head. "The government officials are like wolves and tigers. They never show mercy to the families of sinners. That little girl was caught, how could she have a good ending?" Shen Miao sighed. "If I were to say, that prefectural magistrate Pei knew that his daughter would fall into the tiger's mouth and her life would be worse than death, but he still pushed his daughter out. It is somewhat heartless." Pei Lang closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. "Mr. Pei, you must be feeling the same way." Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him, "But one would think that this has nothing to do with Mr. Pei, because Mr. Pei is not from Lu. Mr. Pei is a merchant that was born in the Ding capital. Speaking of these, it is only because this Lu wine is intoxicating and one was momentarily sentimental." The gentleness on Pei Lang's face suddenly disappeared and was replaced with a strong vigilance and precaution. He said, "This is General Shen's intention." Shen Miao shook her head. My father dotes on me and gave me an embroidery workshop. The embroidery workshop is lacking an embroidery lady. Shen Miao dragged her voice. One heard that more than 10 years ago, Prefectural Magistrate Pei's eldest daughter knew double-sided embroidery since young. Coincidentally, this Baoxiang Lu's young lady Luing also knew double-sided embroidery. I thought that since both of them were reduced to prostitution and knew double-sided embroidery, perhaps young lady Luing and that sinner's young lady had some relation. As for me, I had some compassion and saved her from prostitution. Shen Miao looked at Pei Lang and said, Mr. Pei, do you think that this student did the right thing? Chapter 369. She referred to herself as a student. Her black hair was wrapped in a man's official hat. Her smiling appearance made her look like a handsome young man. But in those clear eyes, there were deep secrets and intentions that no one could see through or guess at. She pretended to be charming and quick-witted, but she vividly displayed the hidden daggers behind the smiles of the officials in the official world. Dealing with her was like walking on a tightrope at the edge of a cliff. There were hidden meanings in her words, and it was hard to tell whether she was a friend or foe. Pei Lang tilted his head. What do you think? Shen Miao smiled. Her smile was pure, as if she was really happy that she had done a good deed. She said, I think it's very good. Even if that prefectural magistrate Pei's son found out about elder sister's whereabouts and personally came to redeem elder sister's freedom, based on Miss Pei's resentment towards prefectural magistrate Pei and her own temperament, she would not be willing. Instead, you'll ruin your life. Pei Lang did not speak. Some people in the world are originally jade, but after being mixed in a pile of rocks for a long time, they become rocks. But there were some people who hid their arrogance in their bones. Even if they were ground to dust, the arrogance in their bones would not be shaken. It was said that although prefectural magistrate Pei had committed a crime, he was an arrogant person. Presumably, the son and daughter that he taught would not be inferior to him. You say, Shen Miao looked at Pei Lang, would that young lady rather live with the identity of a noble lady who has fallen into prostitution or live with the identity of a prostitute who has washed herself clean? After saying so much, Pei Lang sneered, what do you want me to do? Mr. Pei, you're smart. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. One little clue reveals the general trend, and one can understand the meaning of a song. That's what they say. Shen Miao was not stingy with her compliments to Pei Lang before saying, Gentleman Pei is a talented person and has knowledge in his chest, why not enter officialdom? Shen Miao. Pei Lang suddenly shouted. He did not know that Shen Miao's words had poked his sore spot as he suddenly became agitated, and even Jing Zhe and Guyu looked at him. Pei Lang said furiously, don't even think about it. Gentleman Pei need not be anxious and might as well listen to me calmly. Shen Miao smiled, perhaps Gentleman Pei was frightened by my story just now. Feeling that in the officialdom, if one is not careful, one would implicate the entire residence and it would be dangerous and full of misfortune. Moreover, after entering officialdom, one would not be as comfortable as being a carefree gentleman. Pei Lang's expression gradually recovered, as if he had returned to that he was a gentleman. But you are all alone now. You don't have a lover or a family, so you don't have to worry about being implicated. Furthermore, in this world, those who stand high can see far. Those who stand high can also do more. If he wanted to protect the people he wanted to protect, it was not enough to just rely on a teacher. Even though teacher is able to have students all over the world, but... Shen Miao calmly and leisurely raised her cup. It was obvious that she was smiling, but in a moment there was an indifferent coolness. She said, when something really happens, the noble families would avoid it like the plague, so how would they do their best? It is to be the right as it is to be as to be strong. By one, as one's strength as one can. As. Who taught you to say these words and what is the purpose? What benefits is there for him if I enter officialdom? Shen Miao gently smiled. Pei Lang, this person looked gentle and indifferent and was indeed a gentleman who did not care about external things and wholeheartedly devoted himself to teaching. But whenever he discussed about matters, he would always be able to get to the crux of the matter. In the previous life, Fu Xiu-yi thought of all ways to win Pei Lang over to be his advisor and even ascended to the throne of the nation's tutor. It was not by chance. Why does gentleman Pei ask what benefits are there for others but not ask what benefits are there for oneself? Shen Miao did not answer his question but cleverly went around in a roundabout way and replied indifferently, getting promoted, getting rich and marrying a wife, at the end the one benefiting is only gentleman yourself. When doing business, how would one ask others how much money one earned but not mention how much one earned? Chapter 370. How did I profit? Pei Lang said lightly. Teacher did not profit but young lady Luing did. Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him and her bright eyes flashed. A female turning good and having a steady reliance for the rest of her life is equivalent to saving another's life. Pei Lang stared at Shen Miao. If at this time he still did not understand Shen Miao's intention, then he would be a real fool. After entering officialdom, what do I need to do? Pei Lang asked. Shen Miao looked at him with satisfaction. It was Pei Lang's usual style to weigh the pros and cons in the shortest time and make the most advantageous choice. But her mind could not help but think of the time when Fu Xiu-yi deposed the crown prince. She also knelt down and begged Pei Lang. Pei Lang's tone of discussion was as rational and ruthless as now. Now the chips were in her hands and this once high and mighty imperial tutor could only be manipulated by her. Shen Miao's heart floated with a trace of shallow comfort. This comfort was shown on her face and became joy. Actually it is nothing much. Shen Miao said, teacher is overflowing with talent and even if one does not take the initiative to enter officialdom, 1 year later there would naturally be noble people who would solicit you. One only hoped that at that time teacher would not reject the noble person and think of ways to agree to it. Of course on the surface one would agree but one must be used by me. You want me to be an insider? Pei Lang looked at Shen Miao incredulously. Shen Miao shook her head, how can it be considered as an insider? Teacher can be promoted and get rich. I guarantee that teacher's identity will not be exposed and only need to tell me some news at certain times. Pei Lang was silent for a moment before looking at Shen Miao, who is the noble person that you are talking about? Shen Miao smiled gently, Prince Ding, Fu Xiu-yi. Pei Lang was startled and involuntarily looked at Shen Miao again. He knew that Shen Miao was in love with Prince Ding in the past to the point that it became a laughing stock in the city and also knew that Prince Ding, that kind of hidden person, would be dismissive of Shen Miao. Afterwards one did not know when it started but Shen Miao seemed to have changed into another person. Pei Lang had always felt that there was someone behind Shen Miao giving pointers but at this moment thinking about it, he could not help but guess, could it be that it was because love turned to hate that she even schemed against Prince Ding? But just because love was not reciprocated, one would do such things. Pei Lang was confused. The girl in front of him was pretty in men's clothing. After drinking wine, there was a faint blush on her cheeks. She was in the prime of her youth, and her appearance was fair and lovely. Her eyes were like a newborn cub's, untainted by even a speck of dust. However, in her every movement, there was an inadvertent flirtatiousness. Pei Lang felt a little uncomfortable. To him, talking to a young lady of Shen Miao's age was like an elder talking to a younger generation, or at least like an older brother talking to a younger sister. But at this moment, it seemed that he was the one at a disadvantage. His every move was being led by the nose, and he couldn't even resist. What do you want? Pei Lang had asked this question many times and until now, he was not sure if the person who did these things was someone else or Shen Miao herself. It was as if his trump card had been seen by Shen Miao, but he did not even understand Shen Miao's initial purpose. He was absolutely suppressed. I don't want to do anything. I just want to make a decision that's good for me and Sir. Shen Miao smiled as she tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, making her neck as white as jade. She said, Teacher, are you going to agree or not? I can only answer here. Pei Lang asked. You have Shen Miao pointed to the wine pot. Time for a pot of wine. After drinking this pot of wine, teacher will tell me the answer. No need. Pei Lang interrupted her words. If you can do what you promised, I will agree to it. There was a moment of silence in the room. After a moment, Shen Miao smiled. She lifted the wine pot and filled the 2 empty cups with wine before picking up the cup in front of her and made a gesture to toast with Pei Lang. Chapter 371. Pei Lang hesitated for a moment before raising his cup. There was a strange feeling in his heart. To drink with one's own student in a restaurant. His heart was somewhat hot. I wish Mister's future bright and boundless prospects. Shen Miao smiled as she drank the wine in one gulp. She drank it very quickly and a trace of wine flowed out from the corner of her mouth, across her slightly pointed chin and into her white collar. Pei Lang looked away. No matter how beautiful a budding young female was, she was still young and inexperienced. Especially Shen Miao, this kind of gentle and delicate beauty, she was dignified and reserved. Pei Lang was not a person who loved beauty, but for a moment, his mind was in a mess as he felt that this was not right and out of place. A trace of carefreeness flashed in Shen Miao's eyes. Most likely it was because she drank the wine that some hidden emotions in her heart came out like a sin. She remembered that Pei Lang had a dignified and solemn appearance and was most particular about reason. In front of Pei Lang, she vividly interpreted the 4 words motherly model of the world, but at the end she was still defeated by Pei Lang's pros and cons. That was the imperial tutor who could decide Fu Ming's life and death in the previous lifetime, but now she was holding on to his weak spot. In front of Pei Lang, she had the bearing of an empress and could not even cry for Wan Yu. Now, she did not have the dignity of an empress and did not have the virtues of a woman. She dressed up as a male, went to a brothel and drank with a teacher. Her actions were frivolous and unrestrained. What could Pei Lang do? He also could not do anything to her. But that carefreeness was only for a short moment. When Pei Lang agreed, she knew that there was no need to continue pestering him. The flirtatious look that was caused by the wine faded away and inch by inch she became sober. She stood up and lifted her chin slightly, returning to that slightly dignified Shen Miao. After young Lady Luing has settled down, one will inform Mr. of the location of the embroidery workshop. Shen Miao nodded her head. The money has already been paid. Mr. Please drink slowly. One cannot often drink the wine of the Lu. One did not know if the last sentence was sarcasm or politeness, but it made Pei Lang's brows slightly wrinkled as he watched Shen Miao leave with a few people. He picked up the wine and drank a mouthful. It should be a mellow wine, but it was surprisingly astringent in his mouth. Walking out of the door, Jing Zhe and Gu Yu did not dare to speak as both of them could see that Shen Miao was not in a good mood at the moment. Pei Lang's words made them confused in the clouds and sensitively felt that this matter was not a small matter, thus they did not dare to speak easily. When the cold wind blew, the blush on her face dissipated. Shen Miao closed her eyes and when she opened them again, there was only coldness in her eyes. As for Pei Lang, she still held a grudge against him for standing idly by the side. No matter how hard she tried to hide it, it still leaked out a little. However, his goal was achieved. Let's go back. She walked towards the carriage. In another hidden room adjacent to Kuai Huolu, the few people in the room were all silent. Just now he had seen a good show. At first he thought it was full of fun, but now that the person had left, the tea had cooled. Thinking about it carefully, he couldn't help but feel astonished. Ji Yushu swallowed his saliva and seemed to want to break this dull atmosphere. It is really good to have a relationship with this building. At least it is more convenient to eavesdrop on the walls. Not only can one listen, one can also see. Ha, very good. At the back of the carved pillar, there was a huge colored glass that was hidden by the thin railing. It was said that it was colored glass that came from the Western Hemisphere. One end could not see this end, but this end could see that end. In addition, there was a copper pillar that was full of small holes, so everything that was said could be heard clearly. But when Ji Yushu finished speaking, the other two people in the room did not answer him. Gao Yang used his folding fan to support his chin, which was his usual appearance when he was thinking. Xie Jingxing bent his elbow to support his head as he played with the teacup in his hands while thinking about something. Unable to stand such an atmosphere, Ji Yushu opened his mouth. Both of you do not remain silent. Isn't it just a matter of Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residence in the Lu province? Pei Lang is Prefectural Magistrate Pei's son. Shen Miao's story was easily told because she believed that Pei Lang could understand, and the three people here were not fools, so they understood after thinking about it. The Lu province's Sinner Prefectural Magistrate Pei had a pair of children. The older sister was Lu Ying and the younger brother was the current Pei Lang. During the escape, in order to protect Pei Lang, the Pei family arranged people to abandon Lu Ying, and Lu Ying eventually fell into prostitution. And Pei Lang had already arranged a retreat route for the Pei family and turned into a Ding capital person. He lived here since young and was born into a merchant family. His parents passed away a few years ago and now he was alone. His natural background was not discovered by anyone for many years. However, Xie Jingxing's lips lazily hooked up, so how did she know about the details that Bai Shaosheng was unable to find out? At the end, his voice turned cold and his peach blossom eyes were filled with murderous intent. Chapter 372. How so? Ji Yushu asked. Gao Yang touched his chin. Since one wants to deal with Prince Ding, it is not just Prince Ding's side. The Crown Prince, Prince Zhou, and Prince Li, which side is Shen Miao's people on? Not on any side. Xie Jingxing said. Ji Yushu felt strange. Why is it not on any side? Xie Jingxing's eyes slightly slowed down. Pei Lang is not an ordinary person but has yet to enter officialdom and is still immature. Just now all of you have heard that Shen Miao's moves, Shen Xian may not be able to use it as neatly as her. Slippery and slippery, not admit, not deny, not decline and also not accept. The officials who had been in and out of the sea of officials for many years might not be able to do it as smoothly as her. Shen Xian was a military general and Luo Shuayan was also a military general, so where did Shen Miao learn this? Was there an expert guiding the Shen family? He originally thought so, but now it seemed that it was Shen Miao's own idea. If she was the crown prince or other prince's people, she would not use such a step-by-step planning method. Each prince had their own power behind them, so how would they use such a clumsy method? However, she was able to maximize the goal that she could achieve within the scope of her own ability. One could not help but wonder how big of a storm she would be able to stir if she was given enough background and power. Even if she did not have any chips in her hands now, she could still slowly cultivate chess pieces. The world was like a chess game, and in this chess game of Ming Qi, there were too many people playing. But Xie Jingxing had never placed Shen Miao in it. She was a weak female and had no motive. But now Xie Jingxing could see her ambition through the young female's ability to win over a hero with a cup of wine. But we still do not know how she knew about Pei Lang's background. Ji Yushu said, even the Feng Xian pawnshop did not manage to find out. Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residents used all their strength to protect this son of his, so they must have made full preparations. Pei Lang indeed did not disappoint his father's expectations. He did not seek revenge nor did he have any resentment and concealed his identity to become a teacher. No one would pay attention to him, but Shen Miao saw through his tricks and even used Lu Ying as a bargaining chip to counter Pei Lang. One did not know where she got the news from, just like the Chen brothers previously. Do not care about her. Xie Jingxing said, is the request for martial written? I did. Gao Yang frowned. But are you sure? From the start, there was no turning back. Also, the other side hasn't received any news about your plan yet. If they don't agree, do as I say. Xie Jingxing stood up. Returning to the Shen residence, in the western courtyard, Shen Miao changed her clothes and just as she took off her hair, she saw Bai Lu rushing in and said, "Young lady, Furen asked you to go to the room as there is an important matter to discuss." The end of the year had passed, and it was almost spring. Because Shen Xian requested Emperor Wen Hui to stay in the Ding capital for half a year more, Luo Shuiyan's life was much more relaxed. He would go all out to buy clothes and jewelry for Shen Miao or let Shen Qiu bring Shen Miao to eat, drink and play. Sometimes Shen Miao herself felt that she was raised by Shen Xian and wife as a hedonistic son of rich parents. Shen Miao casually tied up her hair and went to Luo Shuiyan's room. Upon entering the house, one was surprised to see that Shen Xian and Shen Qiu were also there. Seeing her enter, Luo Shuiyan quickly pulled her to sit beside her and said, "Today, what did Jiao Jiao go out for?" Shen Miao let Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang stay in the room and if anyone asked, she would say that she went out for a stroll. She said, casually strolled and passed by Kuai Huolu and brought a few jars of strong wine for father and eldest brother. Worthy of being father's darling. Shen Xian's eyes brightened when he heard that, this Ding capital's wine is too sweet and greasy. How can it be considered as wine? It is still the strong wine that is better. Satisfying. Chapter 373. Shen Qiu was also happy, little sister is so thoughtful. All you know is to drink. Luo Shuiyan rolled her eyes at the father and son pair and said, those things can be bought by the servants. Jiao Jiao doesn't need to care about them. You this woman. Shen Xian was unhappy again, it is all Jiao Jiao's kind intentions. How can the servants buy the same as Jiao Jiao? How short-sighted. It was rare for Shen Miao to have such a close relationship with them and Shen Xian was very happy. Even if Shen Miao brought back 2 jars of water, he would be happy to the heavens, so naturally he would refute Luo Shuiyan's words. Short-sighted? Luo Shuiyan squinted at him. Furen is happy or angry? Shen Xian immediately said, I am a stinky brat who is short-sighted. Shen Xian slapped Shen Qiu's head. Luo Shuiyan was too lazy to see the father and son putting on a show and looked at Shen Miao, Jiao Jiao, the reason for coming here today is actually because there is a matter to discuss with you. Mother, please speak. You've heard about the separation of the family. Your father and I have also thought it through. We have to buy a new house. There was a house in the east of the city that was not bad. He could buy some maids to clean and serve him. It's just. Luo Shuiyan looked at Shen Miao and was somewhat embarrassed. Previously when your father and I went to the northwest region, we left you behind and felt that with the protection of the Shen family, you would be more stable. Now that the family has separated, if your father, your big brother and I leave, you're a girl. It's not safe for you to live alone in a house, and you're also afraid of people talking nonsense. So. Jiao Jiao, are you willing to go to the northwest with me? Shen Miao was slightly startled. Sister, the northwest is so fun. Shen Qiu saw that Shen Miao was in a daze and quickly said, it is not as exaggerated as what they said. Living in the Shaochun city, there are mountains on one side and rivers on the other. There are also many rare birds and beasts. At that time to hunt, one would be able to get a white tiger skin to make a cloak for you. Nonsense. Luo Shuiyan laughed and scolded, your sister is a girl, what does she need the white tiger skin for? Shen Qiu scratched his head. There's also a mine. The gemstones there are huge. Sister can also make jewelry. Shen Miao smiled slightly. She was still somewhat hesitant because there were other things to do in the Ding capital, but after hearing Shen Qiu's words, she had some yearning for the Shaochun city in the northwestern region. Who didn't want to live a carefree life? Who was willing to open their eyes and think about how to scheme against others every day? She sighed in her heart. She would just go along with it. As long as she went this once, she would not have to go next year. All right. Under everyone's expectant gaze, Shen Miao nodded her head. I also want to go and experience it. Luo Shuiyan gave a sigh of relief. Shen Xian laughed loudly. I already said that Jiao Jiao would definitely agree. After coming back for so long, when has Jiao Jiao ever despised us martial artists? Younger sister, Shen Qiu was also excited. When the time comes, I will bring you to see my brothers. They all know that I have a younger sister and have never seen you before. You haven't seen your grandfather's family since you were born, so you won't be able to recognize them this time. Luo Shuiyan's paternal family was a military general in the northwestern region, and they only rushed over once when Shen Miao was born. Afterwards, because they were separated by 1,000 li, they did not see each other in these years. Shen Miao's eyes drooped. In the last lifetime, after Luo Shuiyan's death, the Luo family and the Shen family broke off contact. Shen Miao did not have a deep relationship with the grandfather's family, so she was not clear what kind of ending the Luo family would have. But thinking about it, with Mei Furen's ruthless methods, there would be a way to make Fu Xiaoyi not let off the Luo family. After speaking some more until it was late, Luo Shuiyan then rushed Shen Miao back to her room to rest. After Shen Miao freshened up, she sat in front of the table and looked at the dancing flames and could not help but sigh. If she really wanted to follow Shen Xian to the northwestern region, then she had to settle everything in this half a year. Chapter 374. The only thing worth comforting was the matter of Pei Lang. She had always been very clear that the Shen family was like a big tree that attracted the wind, and it was not good to be involved in the matters of the palace. However, she was just an unmarried daughter and did not have the chance to come into contact with deeper things. Moreover, many things had changed in this life, so he could only let Pei Lang be a spy. Fu Xiaoyi's temperament was suspicious and he would study a lot of things that were sent to his door, so it was inevitable that he would not investigate her. But 1 year later, Fu Xiaoyi would take the initiative to recruit Pei Lang, and Pei Lang would push the boat with the current and it would be much easier. As for subduing Pei Lang, there was still a bit of luck involved. That year when Fu Xiaoyi subdued Pei Lang, it was also because one of his subordinates had a friendship with prefectural magistrate Pei's residence, thus he was able to find out about Pei Lang's background. At that time it was because Fu Xiaoyi had settled down Luing that Pei Lang was ultimately used by him. The Pei siblings were people who were unmoved by force or persuasion. They had their own ideas. For example, Luing, after falling into prostitution, one could no longer see a trace of the daughter of an official's family. She was at ease being a prostitute, and perhaps recalling her original identity made her feel pain. As for Pei Lang, he didn't even think about revenge. He was content as a teacher. Luing was not willing to admit her own identity and was resentful towards the Pei family for abandoning her to protect her younger brother. When Pei Lang came forward, Luing would resist even more intensely. But Shen Miao gave Luing a docile way to live. To be able to control Luing was to be able to control the guilty Pei Lang. After a few years, Pei Lang, who had gone through many trials and tribulations in court, would be more mature, and when he saw Shen Miao's words today, he would feel that it was full of loopholes. However, Pei Lang had yet to become an official. No matter how smart he was, he still lacked experience. Young lady, it is better to rest early. Jingzhi smiled. Tomorrow one still need to follow Furen to see the residence at the eastern side of the city. Shen Miao nodded. In this half a year, at least the family would be separated, and he would be able to start a new residence. However, she didn't expect that her plans couldn't keep up with the changes. On the morning of the second day, after Shen Miao had her meal, Luo Shuiyan's maid came over and said that after Shen Miao changed her clothes, she would go to the residence. After all, this was a residence that he would be living in the future. Whether it was comfortable or not, he would have to take a look before deciding. But before Shen Miao could dress up, someone came from the palace. She wanted Luo Shuiyan to make a trip to the palace, and the palace maid also said that if there was no problem, Shen Miao could also be brought along. Although he said so, it was almost like an order. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu's faces immediately darkened, and Luo Shuiyan was also a little confused. Even though she was a noblewoman in the capital, she was usually not in the Ding capital and was not familiar with those furens in the circle of noblewomen. It would be a joke if the one who invited was a lady from the palace. No matter how she thought about it, Luo Shuiyan did not have much of a relationship with the women in the palace. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu thought further. Luo Shuiyan did not have any relationship with the females but was requested to bring Shen Miao along. The drunkard's intention was not in the wine. Could it be that they had some ideas on Shen Miao? Once it was about Shen Miao, they would be especially nervous. Shen Xian said, "It is better for me to accompany Furen to the palace." "What are you going to do?" Luo Shuiyan said, "I didn't invite you here, and you think it's not troublesome enough. I will bring Jiao Jiao along." She hesitated for a moment. With so many people, one would not do anything out of line. Moreover, I am not a female without the strength to truss a chicken. If she wanted to say that if there was anything wrong, one would not necessarily be at a disadvantage if one were to fight. Shen Xian nodded his head. "One think that the current situation is not that tense. You can rest assured and go." Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao's hand and boarded the horse carriage that the palace arranged. She originally planned to go to the residence early in the morning, but because of this matter, no one knew if it was a blessing or a curse. Chapter 375. Shen Qiu and Shen Xian were at the residence's doors, and seeing the horse carriage leaving, they asked uneasily, "Father, mother and younger sister will be fine, right? I will make a trip to the Ministry of War." Shen Xian turned around. "You stay in the residence. If anything happens, you will be able to provide support." Shen Qiu nodded. In the carriage, Shen Miao's little face was taut, but there were all kinds of guesses in her heart. She didn't feel that she was in any danger. She didn't have anything on her that was worth scheming against. Moreover, she knew better than anyone about the ways of the ladies in the palace. Even if they had a strategy, it wouldn't be so brazen today. The imperial family cared about their reputation the most. If something happened to her in the palace today, the imperial family would be the first to be blamed. If it was the other way around. Shen Miao's gaze was heavy. The females in the palace did not have any relationship with Luo Shuiyan, but they summoned Luo Shuiyan to the palace to speak. Perhaps they wanted to inquire about something from Luo Shuiyan. The drunkard's intention was not wine, but what was it? The Shen family? Or was it Shen Xian? But why would she suddenly pay attention to Shen Xian? Shen Xian had been keeping a low profile in the capital these days and did not have any connection with Fu Xiu like in the last lifetime. Even if the imperial family wanted to suppress the Shen family, they would have to have a good reason to do so. Could it be that there was already a reason for that? Shen Miao was a little confused. Wanting Luo Shuiyan to bring her into the palace should be a warning. If anything were to happen, Shen Miao, her daughter, would not be able to protect her. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was possible. Shen Miao could not help but feel a little nervous. There were many things in this lifetime that were different from the previous lifetime, especially the big picture of Ming Qi. She tried her best to avoid and delay the tragedy of the Shen family, but it was inevitable that fate would go wrong. What was it this time? Luo Shuiyan saw that Shen Miao's expression was not good and thought that Shen Miao was afraid and said with heartache, "Jiao Jiao, do not be afraid, it is only entering the palace to talk to the ladyships. It'll be over soon. We'll come back to look at the house then." Shen Miao smiled faintly but was still somewhat absent-minded. When they reached the entrance of the palace, there was already a palace maid who was there to receive them. When she saw both of them, she led them in. On the way, Luo Shuiyan asked the palace maid who looked like a female official which consort had invited them. The female official smiled but did not answer, only saying that she would know when she arrived. At this time, in the palace's Radiance Hall, two beautiful women were laughing and chatting in the hall. The woman on the left had her hair combed into a fairy bun and wore a red palace dress embroidered with gold. She was gorgeous, and although she was smiling as she spoke, her eyes were somewhat absent-minded. She was extremely disrespectful to the woman beside her. Although she acted like this, the woman beside her did not get angry. Instead, she replied with a smile. This woman wore an apricot-colored dress with plum blossoms on it. Her appearance was not as outstanding as the woman on the left, but she appeared gentle and polite, and also elegant. These two people were not others but the palace consorts that invited Shen Miao and her daughter to the palace today. The one on the left was consort Su Xian and the elegant one on the right was consort Dong Shu. It is fine that His Majesty wants us to invite Shen Furen over, but why also bring the young lady of the Shen family? Consort Su Xian was somewhat impatient, going for a long time and not coming back. It is really such a big face. The general residence is not a short distance from the palace. Consort Dong Shu smiled, Jie, do not be anxious. Consort Su Xianfei laughed, Mimi, you are used to being a good person. She suddenly thought of something and smiled mischievously, speaking of which, that young lady of the Shen family had once admired His Ninth Highness. Could it be that you are very satisfied with her, that's why you protect her like this? Consort Dong Shu's expression slightly stagnated before she smiled, Jie really know how to joke. It is just that. Since His Majesty wants both of us to come over, it is better to do proper business. That fifth Shen young lady is only following her mother and in a while the palace maids will bring her out. Chapter 376. Bringing out Emperor Wen Hui's name, the domineering consort Su Xian could not say anything. Just as she was about to say a few sarcastic words, she suddenly saw her own female official coming in. Consort Su Xian asked, arrived? The female official nodded her head and in a short while, Luo Shuayan and Shen Miao walked in. After greeting the two females, Shen Miao followed Luo Shuayan and stood at the side with her head lowered, not lifting it up. One could only hear a slightly sharp voice, Shen Furen, this must be your daughter. Lift up your head and let Ben Gong take a look. Shen Miao paused for a moment and slowly lifted her head up to meet the two females' sizing gaze. When she saw clearly who the person sitting on the right was, her heart could not help but tighten and felt that the blood in her entire body was boiling. Consort Su Xian on the left was Prince Shou and Prince Jing's consort mother and consort Dong Shu on the right was Fu Xiuyi's birth mother. At this moment consort Dong Shu looked over with a smile and said to consort Su Xian, really a neat child. Clean and tidy, one can see that one has good fortune. Good fortune. Shen Miao only felt flustered in her heart. Consort Dong Shu looked at her with a gentle face and if one did not know, one would definitely put down the vigilance in one's heart because of her kind attitude. Consort Dong Shu was not favored as there were countless females around Emperor Wen Hui. There were those with background, talents, beauty and character. Consort Dong Shu however was gentle and slow, did not fight for anything and did not snatch anything. Just based on the word, stable, she was able to sit in the position of the four consorts. On the surface, she was the one with the lowest status among the four consorts but Shen Miao knew that consort Dong Shu was not a harmless female like her appearance. In the beginning when Shen Miao married Fu Xiuyi, consort Dong Shu also praised that, good fortune brings prosperity to the husband but afterwards Fu Xiuyi's wings gradually grew and consort Dong Shu treated her lukewarmly. When she returned from the Qin country, consort Dong Shu who was the Empress Dowager was on the same side as Mei Furen. In consort Dong Shu's eyes, she was also a chess piece that was used to rope in the Shen family and was a vulgar chess piece that could not be seen in public. Later when Fu Xiuyi abolished the crown prince, consort Dong Shu was the first to step forward to help Fu Xing up. She quickly lowered her head to hide the trace of hatred in her eyes. Consort Su Xian and consort Dong Shu however thought that Shen Miao was shy and consort Su Xian casually asked, how old are you this year? Replying to your ladyship. Shen Miao softly said, this official's daughter is 14. 14. Consort Su Xian pondered for a while and smiled, "You will be married soon." This senseless sentence made Luo Shuaiyan nervous as she was most worried about Shen Miao. And a female's marriage was more important to one's entire life. If Shen Miao's marriage was controlled by the people in the palace. Luo Shuaiyan's expression was not good. Seeing Luo Shuaiyan being so affectionate, Consort Su Xian laughed instead and said, "Shen Furen is so nervous." "Why? Are you afraid that Ben Gong will be a matchmaker for young lady Shen?" Luo Shuaiyan hurriedly said, "I dare not." "Do not worry." Consort Su Xian said, "Even if Ben Gong really wants to be a matchmaker, Ben Gong will not randomly choose a couple. I will definitely ask young lady's opinion." Speaking of which, Su Xianfei looked at Shen Miao and smiled maliciously. "Shen young lady, do you have anyone in mind now?" To ask Consort Dong Shu if Shen Miao had anyone in mind in front of her, everyone knew that Shen Miao was once in love with Fu Xiu-yi. This was to embarrass Consort Dong Shu in public. Consort Su Xian had always relied on Emperor Wen Hui's favor to be arrogant and despotic. Among the four consorts, Consort Dong Shu was the easiest to bully, so to be able to use Consort Dong Shu as a raft, Consort Su Xian was never tired of it. "Many thanks to your ladyship's good intentions. This official's daughter does not have anyone in mind now," Shen Miao said as she hung her head. Consort Su Xian seemed to be somewhat bored and felt that Shen Miao had a wooden temperament and was not like the idiot in the rumors, otherwise she could make fun of it. She waved her hands, "Never mind. If there is none, then there is none." Chapter 377. Luo Shuaiyan became more cautious. As long as it was related to Shen Miao, she would have to raise 120% of her attention to deal with it. Just as she was thinking, she heard Consort Dong Shu laughing from above. "Furen need not be nervous. Today us two sisters invite you into the palace, in fact it is to talk about daily life with Furen." After a pause, she then continued, "Us two sisters have never been to the northwestern region before, and it is a story that Furen followed the general into battle. We are very curious about the northern region and came to invite Furen for a chat." Consort Dong Shu's voice was gentle and intimate, like the spring breeze that soothed one's heart. Luo Shuaiyan did not relax, and instead Shen Miao became more suspicious. She obviously knew that there would be other intentions in entering the palace today, and perhaps it was Emperor Wen Hui who was here to inquire about something. Emperor Wen Hui deliberately looked for Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu. Both of them, one was domineering and the other was gentle. With one hard and one soft working together, it was easy to make one confused and involuntarily speak. Shen Miao's heart was somewhat nervous. "Many thanks to your ladyship's appreciation." Luo Shuaiyan also smiled. "It is just that the northern region is boring and one fear that your ladyship will not like it." "No harm." Consort Dong Shu smiled. "Since we invited you over, one would not be afraid of boredom." Her voice paused as she suddenly thought of something and looked at Shen Miao. Fu Xiu-yi knew that the emperor wanted them to sound out Luo Shuaiyan and also knew that Luo Shuaiyan would bring Shen Miao along as a warning. Yesterday he had instructed her that if Shen Miao was present, Shen Miao must be sent away during the discussion. Fu Xiu-yi was Consort Dong Shu's son, so naturally Consort Dong Shu would not doubt, but no matter what, she could not see what was worth guarding against this slightly wooden and timid young lady. Shen Miao's head hung down and one could not see her expression clearly. One only heard Consort Dong Shu saying, "But it would be boring for a young lady to hear such interesting things. Tong Yao, bring fifth Shen young lady to stroll around the garden, and when she is tired, bring her to the living quarters to have some snacks and take good care of her." Even though Consort Su Xian was somewhat surprised, she thought that it was Emperor Wen Hui's idea and it did not affect her, so naturally she did not refute. Luo Shuaiyan's heart was uneasy and it was best to place Shen Miao in front of her, but in the current situation, she also realized that the following conversation with the two consorts would not really be idle. At least, in broad daylight, these people did not dare to let anything happen to Shen Miao. Thinking like this, her heart was slightly at ease and she smiled at Shin Miao. Jiao Jiao, follow the female official to stroll around the garden. Mother will come and look for you after speaking to the ladyships. Shin Miao did not refuse, but her heart cried out that it was not good. Why did he send her away without any rhyme or reason? She could act coquettishly and refuse to leave, but that would be too deliberate. Why didn't they let others hear their conversation? Could it be that she had already aroused suspicion? The person who spoke was Consort Dong Shu. It was the first time Consort Dong Shu met her. Could it be that Fu Xiu-yi was reminding Consort Dong Shu? This thought flashed through Shin Miao's mind. But she didn't say anything. She stood up respectfully and said goodbye to concubines Su Xian and followed Tong Yao out. Official Tong Yao led her to the garden. Gardens could be seen everywhere in the imperial palace. They were probably built for the imperial concubines, and they were quite beautiful. It was just that Shin Miao did not have the mood to appreciate it. She was more familiar with every inch of land here than anyone else, and knew clearly which part of the garden was what kind of flowers grew, so how would she have any interest to listen? Official Tong Yao also saw that she was absent-minded and said, "If young lady Shen is tired, this servant will bring you to the living quarters to sit. There are snacks there." Shin Miao nodded her head. Just as they walked halfway and saw the doors to the living quarters, a little eunuch ran over and said a few words to Tong Yao's ear in a hurry. Tong Yao then said apologetically to Shin Miao, "The living quarters is the house in front. Young lady Shen should go in first. This servant will come over after sending the things over." Shin Miao nodded her head and did not haggle over it. That living quarters was right in front and there were guards everywhere in the palace, so there was no fear of anything happening. She herself had come here before and was very clear about it. Walking to the front of the living quarters, she opened the door and walked in. That door closed by itself with a pa sound. Shin Miao's heart quivered and before she could react, a pair of hands covered her mouth from behind. Shin Miao did not even think as she bit down and bent her elbow to fiercely hit her back. She only heard a "si" sound behind her as she sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Her elbow was grabbed by someone and she was unable to move. A familiar voice sounded with some suppressed anger, "Shin Miao, are you a shrew?" Shin Miao was slightly surprised and the person behind her had already released his hand. She turned her head and looked at the other person. Opposite, Xie Jingxing was touching his own hand and there was a slight anger in his expression. But what Shin Miao cared about was not this. It was different from his previous cynical and unruly romantic appearance. Today he was wearing a dark red official robe with fine cufflinks, long hat and green boots. His sharp and arrogant appearance was a completely different person from before. Shin Miao had never seen him like this before and was stunned for a moment. Xie Jingxing locked the door and turned his head to look at her with his arms crossed, with an appearance of wanting to settle accounts. But Shin Miao was not afraid of him and only frowned. "What are you doing here?" Coming out from the palace, one thought that it might be you and came over to take a look. "It really is." Xie Jingxing said it in an incomparably relaxed manner. "The emperor summoned your father to the palace?" Shin Miao's heart jumped. "What do you mean?" Chapter 378. What do you mean? Shin Miao asked. Xie Jingxing would not say such words for no reason, so there must be some other meaning behind it. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "Shin Yuan is Prince Ding's people." Shin Miao's heart was slightly shocked, but she did not speak. Before Shin Yuan's accident, he had a secret discussion with Prince Ding. Xie Jingxing said, "The Shin family is now like fire and water, so other than dealing with your father, what else could it be?" "Impossible." Shin Miao cried out involuntarily. Xie Jingxing's eyes stared at her as if he wanted to see through Shin Miao and asked, "Why?" Shin Miao's palms were slightly damp and there was a moment of confusion in her heart. The Shin family's accident was not in these 2 years, and the imperial family would delay dealing with the Shin family for a period of time because there was currently no justification for it. Shin Yuan worked for Prince Ding, and both of them were extremely dependable people and would not take action if there was no absolute certainty. For example, in the last lifetime, she only knew that the second and third household also contributed, and Shin Yuan would definitely take out the evidence of rebellion at the end. But what time was it now? It was still too early for the imperial family to deal with Shin Xian, so why would Shin Yuan take action at this time? The evidence at this time should not be complete, and Fu Xiu-yi chose to take action now. How did it become like this? Her expression was uncertain, and when she raised her head, she met with Xie Jingxing's thoughtful gaze. Shin Miao's heart quivered. Xie Jingxing was quick-witted, and one feared that he would be able to find out something from her expression. Thinking of this, she covered up her smile. Shin Yuan is my second older brother. Why would he harm my father? Hearing this, Xie Jingxing smiled instead. His smile had a deeper meaning. Shin Miao, do you think I am a fool? Since little Xie Marquis told me all these, Shin Miao said seriously, but how does His Highness Prince Ding want to deal with my father? Xie Jingxing shook his head. Shin Miao did not hold much hope, and even if Xie Jingxing knew, there was no reason for him to tell her. The Xie family had dabbled in the Ming Qi structure, and if one were to carelessly help, one feared that one would get into trouble. Even if she was in Xie Jingxing's position today, she would not even give a reminder. It was just that. Shin Miao sized up Xie Jingxing's official robes and asked in puzzlement, "Why did you enter the palace?" She asked casually, but did not know that her confident look made Xie Jingxing pause for a moment. In just a short moment, Xie Jingxing lazily said, "Enter the palace to request for commander." "Invite a commander?" Shin Miao was surprised for a moment and subconsciously asked, "Invite a commander for whom?" Xie Jingxing only smiled and did not speak. Shin Miao suddenly looked at him. "You asked to be the commander? North border. Xiongnu?" This time Xie Jingxing was surprised. "How do you know?" The matter of the Xiongnu in the northern borderlands was a secret. Before the edict was issued, Shin Xian might not even know about it, much less Shin Miao. Xie Jingxing had always been curious about where Shin Miao's eyes and ears came from, and since she even knew about the matters in the palace, he was even more surprised. Shin Miao stared blankly at him, but her heart was like a raging storm. In the northern borderlands, the Xiongnu had not retreated, but the terrain of the northern borderlands was complex, and the people of the northern borderlands were ferocious and ferocious. A few years ago, Emperor Wenhui only fought in small skirmishes and was unwilling to confront them head-on. Afterwards the Xiongnu became more aggressive, and Emperor Wenhui sent Xie Ding out for an expedition. The Xie family's army was ferocious but was completely annihilated on the battlefield. At the end of the same year, Xie Ding's corpse was wrapped in horse hide and the entire country mourned. In the spring of the second year, Xie Jingxing went out for an expedition on behalf of his father and was defeated like a landslide. He received the tragic ending of having his heart pierced by 10,000 arrows, skinned and air-dried before being hung on the city walls. Xie Jingxing died at the age of 22, and now he was only 19. Shin Miao's heart felt suffocated for a moment. It was impossible for the emperor to deal with the Xiongnu at this time, and Xie Jingxing requested to be the commander. Xie Ding should not be aware of the matter at this time, and looking at Xie Jingxing's appearance, he should have obtained the order. Chapter 379. Changed again. Changed again. It was obviously a matter of a few years, but it was advanced. If Xie Jingxing went to war now, would it be the same ending as in the past lifetime? As for the Xie family, Shin Miao wanted to keep them to fight against the imperial power in the future, but no matter how much she changed, would some people's fate still follow the old track? Was this arrogant young man with red lips, white teeth, and beautiful, romantic features finally going to take the worst step? Xie Jingxing saw that Shin Miao's expression was strange and did not find it strange. His eyes slightly flashed and said, "You seem to be very worried." Shen Miao did not have the mood to analyze such slightly teasing words as her heart was somewhat confused. She looked at him and said, "You lead the Xie family's army. Pay more attention to the Xie family's army and also pay more attention to the people around you." Shen Miao said word by word. In the beginning, her words were somewhat dry, but towards the end, her expression gradually became serious. The wind and sand of the northern Jiang is strong and the armors of the soldiers are heavy. No matter what, do not take off the breastplate. In the previous lifetime, Xie Jingxing's heart was pierced by thousands of arrows, and perhaps it would be better if he wore the breastplate. More importantly, Shen Miao felt that Xie Jingxing's death was too strange. How could a young general with outstanding battle tactics be defeated so miserably? In addition, she gradually understood the situation and knew that the imperial family had attacked the aristocratic families, so it was not possible that there were no imperial family people in the Xie family's army. And the tragedy of the Xie father and son might not be without the addition of a conspiracy. Shen Miao wholeheartedly thought about the overall situation but did not know that with her and Xie Jingxing's current friendship, it was not to the point of being friends. Thus these words that were full of concern seemed to be somewhat subtle. Xie Jingxing was also surprised by her and suddenly smiled as he approached Shen Miao and slightly bent his head. He was very close to Shen Miao, but his pair of peach blossom eyes were smiling as he teased, "So concerned about me?" Shen Miao was immersed in her own thoughts and did not realize that he was already so close. She was suddenly startled and had not recovered from her own conjecture and was at a loss for a moment. Her eyes were clear, and whenever she was at a loss, it was like a child that made one feel pity for her. Xie Jingxing slightly paused and a feeling of helplessness grew in his heart. He was originally ruthless, and towards the Shen family, he was only a chess piece in the chess game. He knew that Shen Miao's thoughts were deep and her methods were mysterious. She was definitely not a harmless unmarried female like she looked on the surface. But sometimes, he felt that she was just a little girl who didn't understand anything. Bullying a little girl made him feel a little embarrassed. This shame was quickly thrown to the back of his mind. Xie Jingxing took a step back and said, "It is not a good thing that the Shen family army's momentum is too strong." Shen Miao answered, "The one who entered the palace today is my mother, and the ones who summoned her were Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu." When she spoke of Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu, her expression was not respectful, as if she was talking about two ordinary people. Xie Jingxing was also used to it. He said, "Retreat." "Retreat?" Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing did not speak anymore. In the end, he still gave Shen Miao a hint. If Shen Miao was smart, she would understand his meaning. Shen Miao's eyes hung down and thought for a while before saying, "Many thanks." Xie Jingxing lazily waved his hand. No one knew what he was thinking. Shen Miao asked again, "Summon the marshal." "When do we leave?" 10 days later. "So fast?" Shen Miao exclaimed. "Why?" Xie Jingxing turned his head to look at her and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Can't bear to part?" "Not at all." Shen Miao said expressionlessly, "As such." Then one wished the little marquis to be victorious and return triumphantly. After receiving the reward, Xie Jingxing said without a care, "At that time I will give you a little thing as a good luck." Chapter 380. Just as Shen Miao was about to speak, she saw Xie Jingxing pressing her waist and said, "Someone is coming." He then smiled at Shen Miao, "Farewell, Shen." Jiao Jiao. He turned and flew out of the window of the room. This person walked out of the window as though he was walking through his own front door. Shen Miao was still in a daze when the door was pushed open and Tong Yao walked in. Seeing Shen Miao standing in the middle of the room, she asked curiously, "Why is Shen young lady not sitting?" Shen Miao recovered to her senses and smiled before getting up and walking to one side to sit down. But her heart was still thinking about what Xie Jingxing said just now. Xie Jingxing's commander request was to set off 10 days later. 10 days later. Was it not exactly the same as 3 years later? 3 years later would also be at this time. Xie Jingxing would set off, and then the Xie father and son of the Xie family would forever end in the history of Ming Qi. The Xie family would be heading towards an inevitable ending like in the previous lifetime. What about the Shin family? What would happen to the Shin family? Xie Jingxing gave her a hint before he left, but that was not the ending that she wanted to see. If one were to retreat like this, one would be able to keep one's life, but it was only to keep one's life. Without the protection of power, peaceful days would become a luxury. The path of the previous lifetime made Shin Miao clearly understand one point. Only by standing in a higher position than the enemy, would one be able to truly control one's fate. However, Xie Jingxing's method was more than enough to defend but not enough to attack. What method should be used to break it? In the next few hours, Shin Miao kept thinking about this problem. The snacks on the table were not touched at all, the tea was not even drunk, and she did not have the mood to look at those books. This made female official Tong Yao look at her frequently, not knowing how a young lady like Shin Miao could sit for an entire afternoon like an old man. Even those slow-tempered imperial concubines in the palace did not have this kind of patience. One did not know how long they waited until a little eunuch came to invite them. Female official Tong Yao then brought Shin Miao out, and Luo Shuiyan was waiting for her at the door. When she saw Shin Miao, she barely squeezed out a smile and pulled Shin Miao out of the palace to return to the residence. Even though Luo Shuiyan tried her best to act as if nothing had happened, what kind of person was Shin Miao? She had long learnt to observe one's words and body language in the inner palace and could see Luo Shuiyan's worries. She said, "Mother, what did they say to you?" Luo Shuiyan smiled, "Nothing much, just some matters of living in the Shaochun city. He probably hasn't been to the northwest before and wants to see for himself." Shin Miao asked, "Is it really like this? But if that's the case, why did he specially call Mother into the palace to talk for so long? Isn't that too strange?" Luo Shuiyan touched Shin Miao's head. "What is strange about this? The imperial concubines in the palace can't move around, so their days are a bit boring. Mother will talk to them about distant matters to relieve their boredom. They will also be a bit happier." Even so, Luo Shuiyan was still somewhat worried. Although she did not participate in court affairs, it did not mean that she was ignorant of the dangers of the court. Today, she dealt with it carefully, but it was precisely because she talked with the two concubines about daily life that she was even more puzzled. There were no fools in the palace. Everyone was smart. But in today's conversation, it did not involve military affairs at all and did not even mention the Shin family army. Instead, he only talked about the commoners of the Shaochun city, which made Luo Shuiyan puzzled. Those who fought had an intuition for danger. She obviously felt that danger was approaching, but did not know where the problem was. Luo Shuiyan felt somewhat depressed. But she was afraid of scaring Shin Miao and did not intend to talk about these matters with Shin Miao. Shin Miao also did not ask her again. When they returned to the residence, the sky was already nearing evening. Shin Qiu and Shin Xian had been waiting at the residence's doors, and upon seeing both of them return, they were relieved. Chapter 381. After the meal, Luo Shuiyan instructed Shin Miao to rest early before pulling Shin Qiu and Shin Xian back to the room to discuss the matter of entering the palace today. Shin Miao did not follow. She had already heard a lot of things from Luo Shuiyan's mouth, but what she could not understand was what did Shin Yuan give to Fu Xiu. The oil lamp shone brightly in her eyes as Shin Miao sat at the table deep in thought. Jingzhe and Guyu were careful not to disturb her. Outside the window, it started to drizzle. This was the first drizzle since the end of the year, indicating the arrival of spring. Spring was about to arrive and all living things were revived. It was obviously a new hope, but how could one walk out of the dark willows and bright flowers in the heavy ice and snow? Shin Miao closed her eyes. This night, there were also people in embroidered clothes walking in the night. When Xie Jingxing passed by the courtyard, he coincidentally met Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao. When both of them saw him, they immediately stopped and respectfully greeted him, eldest brother. Towards these two people, Xie Jingxing had always turned a blind eye to them, and it was the same today. When he lifted his feet and was about to leave, he was stopped by Xie Changchao. Xie Changchao was somewhat pleased with himself. Long time no see, eldest brother. One do not know what eldest brother is busy with. A few days ago there was a hunt and one wanted to go with eldest brother, but father made us follow to Lu Daren's official banquet, thus one could only regret not going. These days Xie Ding had been bringing Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao to his colleagues' banquets because everyone knew that Xie Ding wanted to bring his two sons into an official career. Speaking of which, Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao were Shu sons and their qualifications were not as good as Xie Jingxing's. If it was not for Xie Jingxing being frivolous and unwilling to enter officialdom, everyone knew that it would not be their turn. But because of Princess Yuqing, Xie Jingxing and Xie Ding were in discord for many years and the relationship between the father and son was like ice. How could it be repaired? Xie Changwu was more modest than Xie Changchao, but even so, his eyes could not hide the contentment. He said, eldest brother should also follow along. Eldest brother is proficient in both the pen and the sword and would definitely gain the favor of all the Daren. At that time it would be much easier to enter officialdom. Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu had already understood Xie Jingxing's temperament and knew that Xie Jingxing was naturally arrogant. The more he said so, the more impossible it was for him to enter officialdom. In terms of obtaining Xie Ding's favor, they were destined to be inferior to Xie Jingxing. In terms of literary and military strategy and even in terms of appearance, they were far inferior to Xie Jingxing. Now that they finally had a chance to suppress Xie Jingxing, naturally they could not wait to be cocky. When Xie Jingxing heard it, he looked at them with a smile that was not a smile and suddenly asked, very proud? Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu were surprised, but Xie Jingxing had already left. The disdain in the corners of his eyes fell into the eyes of the two of them. Looking at Xie Jingxing's fading figure, Xie Changchao said hatefully, what plaything, who does he think he is? Xie Changwu's expression was sinister, there will be a day when I will trample him under my feet. When Xie Jingxing returned to the room, there were already two people waiting. One of them was a middle-aged man with a full beard, while the other was a young man with a straight face. The bearded middle-aged man asked, Master, you really want to? Xie Jingxing sat down in front of the table and waved his hands. Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu. The younger one said, why not? At the end of the words, there was a hint of killing intent. No need. If we take action now, there will be complications. Xie Jingxing interrupted his words, without me, Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao would not do anything to Xie Ding. As for Madame Fong, he sneered, keep her. Both of them bowed their heads in agreement. Xie Jingxing took out a booklet from his sleeve. That was the copy of the commander request that was presented today. Chapter 382. In the end, he still had to make this move. The first ray of sunlight shone through the carved window onto the table. Shen Miao sat in front of the table without moving. Jingzhe carried a silver basin in and jumped in shock upon entering. Why is young lady up so early today? Shen Miao did not speak as Jingzhe walked over. The oil lamp in front of the table had already burned out, and on Shen Miao's fair face, there was a faint greenish black under her eyes. Jingzhe was surprised for a moment and exclaimed, could it be that young lady did not sleep for the entire night? Shen Miao shook her head and pressed her forehead tiredly. She sat there for the whole night. Xie Jingxing's hint made her puzzled and confused. She did not know what Shen Yuan gave to Fu Xiuyi and only knew that it must be bad news for the Shen family. And the word retreat was a move that she did not want the Shen family to make. How should he get out of this predicament? Jing Zhe spoke with some heartache. No matter how worried young lady is, one should not torment one's body like this. Master and madam will be heartbroken if they see this. Young lady, you should eat something first and rest. You don't look well. What if young lady falls down first? Shen Miao also felt that her stomach was rumbling, and after thinking for an entire night, her head was somewhat dizzy, so she said, bring some porridge over. I will sleep for a while after eating. Do not mention this matter to others. Jing Zhe made an AI sound before turning and jogging out, treating it as going to the kitchen to bring Shen Miao's breakfast. Shen Miao stood up and wanted to use hot water to wash her face. Just as she was washing halfway, she suddenly heard footsteps outside the door and Jing Zhe ran back. So fast. Shen Miao was a little surprised. There was still a distance from the small kitchen to here, and even if Jing Zhe ran over, she would still need to wait for a while. Miss, something bad has happened. Jing Zhe was somewhat flustered as she said, someone from the palace has arrived. Summon Master, Furen and eldest young master to the palace immediately. The handkerchief in Shen Miao's hands fell into the basin. She calmed herself down and said, I'll go take a look. In the courtyard, the eunuch from the palace had received Emperor Wen Hui's orders and was talking to Shen Xian. These people would usually be more polite when they saw the formidable general. But today, his attitude was not very clear. Sometimes, the attitude of the master could be seen from the attitude of the messenger. Obviously, this trip to the palace was not a good thing. When Shen Miao came out, not only Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were in the courtyard, the people from the other households also came out. Even old Shen Furen brought Shen Yuanbo out. It was just that looking at this look, old Shen Furen did not show any concern and instead looked on coldly, as if she was afraid of drawing fire onto herself and avoided it. On the other hand, Shen Wan asked the eunuch, may I ask why His Majesty summoned Big Brother to the palace? The eunuch looked up at the sky. I am only acting on His Majesty's orders. I do not know His Majesty's intentions. Darren, quickly follow me into the palace. He urged Shen Xian to leave quickly. When Shen Qiu saw Shen Miao walking over, he was somewhat nervous and quickly pulled Shen Miao's hand. Younger sister, why did you come over? Seeing Shen Miao looking over, he quickly comforted her, younger sister, do not worry. His Majesty only summoned us to the palace to discuss some military matters and will be back soon. When he returns, eldest brother will bring you to eat tanghulu. He was afraid of scaring Shen Miao but did not know that in Shen Miao's eyes, this look was even more suspicious. To summon Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu to the palace, even though she was not brought along, upon careful thought, the people brought along were the leading figures of the Shen family's army, so this matter was definitely related to the Shen family's army. Now that it was the Shen family's military power, it was a hot potato, and once it involved military power, one must be careful of everything. Chapter 383. At this time, if Shen Miao continued to show fear, not only would she not be able to help, it would instead burden Luo Shuiyan and the rest. Thus Shen Miao smiled, really? Eldest brother must keep to his words. Seeing Shen Miao like this, Shen Qiu then let out a sigh of relief. Shen Qiu knew that Shen Miao was intelligent but did not want Shen Miao to be involved with the matters of the court. Moreover, in the court matters, it was never a person's worth, as there would be deaths and injuries at every turn and countless people would be involved, so how would it be easy to explain? Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian also comforted Shen Miao, Jiao, just stay in the residence and do not go anywhere. Wait for father and mother to return, then we will go together to make new clothes for Jiao for the beginning of spring. Shen Miao also complied. She watched helplessly as the eunuch brought Shen Xian and entourage out of the residence. Chen Roqiu pulled Shen Wan's hands and said worriedly, why would eldest brother and eldest Sa suddenly enter the palace? Did something happen? Shen Wan shook his head. Shen Gui said, eldest brother is already in the limelight and does not know how to conduct himself in court. One fear that if something really happened, there would not be anyone to speak to. These words were somewhat meaningful. Shingui's meaning was that if something really happened to Shin Xian, the two brothers Shingui and Shinwan would not send charcoal in the snow. Shin Miao sneered in her heart. She only heard Shin Yu timidly saying, if something happened to eldest Bo, it should be a very big matter. Will it implicate us by bringing them all away? How would it implicate Yuer? Shingui smiled, if it implicates Yuer, the first to bear the brunt should be little 5. Shingui's words were vicious. After the successive loss of his sons, Shingui's career was not smooth. He was originally jealous that Shin Xian's position was higher than his and his prestige was higher than his. Now that he saw Shin Xian's misfortune, naturally he was overjoyed and even hoped that Shin Xian's branch would be wiped out so that there would no longer be any obstacles in front of him. A trace of schadenfreude flashed in Shin Yu's eyes as she looked sympathetically at Shin Miao. Isn't fifth younger sister very pitiful? Shin Miao did not get angry but smiled instead and said lightly, the servants in the palace do not know His Majesty's intention, so it seems that both Shu Shu have already understood His Majesty's intention. She looked at Shingui, since second uncle is able to predict things like a deity, when this matter reaches the ears of His Majesty will appreciate second uncle's ability to understand others. It's rare to see someone like second uncle who can understand others. His Majesty can even be compared to the previous dynasty's official way. As these words came out, Shinwan and Shingui's expressions changed slightly. What was the greatest taboo for an emperor? It was for his officials to randomly guess the emperor's intentions. Shin Miao's words were not to say that Shingui was very clear about Emperor Wen Hui's thoughts, so what was he planning? She even used official Wei from the previous dynasty to insinuate that official Wei was the emperor's trusted aide. Often, the emperor only needed a glance to know what the emperor wanted to do. When the emperor's position was unstable, he had worked together with official Wei to control many of the opposing ministers. But in the end, when the emperor was in power, he had given official Wei a death warrant. No monarch would like an official who could clearly understand one's thoughts. If one understood too clearly, there would be no reverence, and if there was no reverence, perhaps one day a knife would be placed on one's neck. This was the imperial family, the most suspicious. One sentence could decide a person's life and death. Shin Miao's words made Shingui's and Shinwan's expressions change, but they dared not refute it. They were afraid that if these words were to be spread out and heard by Emperor Wen Hui, one did not know how much trouble it would bring to themselves. Both of them were secretly shocked as they did not know where did Shin Miao learn the ability to pin such a big hat onto others with just one sentence. In the past, it was Mei Furen's usual tactic. At this moment Shin Miao was also forced by Shingui's unrestrained mouth and did not really want to fight with them here. The most urgent matter was to think of how to solve this matter. Old Shin Furen had seen enough of the show and was not willing to let her son fall into a disadvantageous position, so she coldly snorted, "Will only bring trouble to the Shin family." She was still thinking about the matter of Shin Xian wanting to separate from the family, but once this matter came out, the matter of the separation would be delayed. Old Shin Furen even thought that if something happened to Shin Xian, they would not be implicated and it would only be the first household that would be implicated. Would not the first household's assets all belong to her? Thinking of this, her eyes revealed a look of greed. Shin Miao's heart was filled with disgust. This room of people had fully acted out what was called throwing stones at a person who was down. The Shin family was definitely on the list of despicable people in the world. Wan Yinyang pulled Shin Dongling's hand and hid at the back. She dared not say anything in this kind of situation. Even though Ren Wanyun was awake, she did not leave Kai Yun Yuan and did not appear today. Shin Dongling said softly, "But what would happen to eldest Bo? Eldest Bo is not in the Ding capital all year round. Could it be that there would be other rewards because of the previous victory?" Shin Dongling's words were most likely to ease the atmosphere. Shin Yu was somewhat displeased with her words and old Shin Furen also revealed an unhappy expression, but only Shin Miao was slightly surprised. Not in the Ding capital all year round. Yes, Shen Xian and wife and Shen Qiu had been fighting all year round in the bitter cold northwestern region and had just returned to the Ding capital. It was impossible to use the excuse of being in the Ding capital as an excuse. And yesterday consort Su Xian and consort Dong Shu were asking about the days in the Shaochun city. What was the use of asking about the days in the Shaochun city for? Shen Miao did not believe that the delicate females in the palace would be interested in the remote northwestern region. There must be a connection. Not in the Ding capital, what kind of crime would it be? Chapter 384. Shen Miao's mind was unsettled and no longer stood here entangled with the Shen family. She did not even turn her head back and quickly walked back to her own room. Outside, Shen Gui and entourage had seen enough of the excitement and wanted to inquire about the matter, thus they dispersed in twos and threes. Shen Yu followed behind Chen Roqiu and there was a trace of joy on her face. Yesterday she heard that it was consort Dong Shu who saw Shen Miao and Luo Shuiyan. Shen Yu's heart was very uneasy. Consort Dong Shu was after all Prince Ding's consort mother, and if consort Dong Shu had eyes on her, what would happen if she randomly pulled strings? Fortunately today it seemed that the first household was unlucky. Thinking of this, Shen Yu's footsteps became relaxed. It was Shen Dongling who was being held by Wan Yinyang, who looked at the courtyard thoughtfully before following back. The huge western courtyard became empty in a blink of an eye. Even Achi followed Shen Xian's guards back to the Shen family's army. Emperor Wenhui suddenly summoned people into the palace and naturally the Shen family's army was imprisoned. Fortunately Mo Qing was still around because Mo Qing was not in the Shen family's army yet. In the room, Jingzhe, Guyu, Bailu and Shuangjiang were standing behind Shen Miao. Mo Qing stood by the door with his head hung down and a trace of solemnity appeared on his face. Even though Shen Dongling said that perhaps Emperor Wenhui would continue to reward Shen Xian, everyone knew that it was impossible. Shen Miao sat at the table with her brows tightly knitted, which made Mo Qing's heart slightly comforted. He was initially worried that Shen Miao would be at a loss of what to do after hearing the news, but now even though Shen Miao's face was solemn, she was not nervous at all. Shen Miao looked at the notes in front of her. The Shen family was then exterminated by Fu Xiu-yi in one fell swoop. At that time she had tried to stop it, but it was Fu Xiu-yi who in front of all the civil and military officials, listed out the Shen family's crimes one by one until she was speechless. Even though one knew that it was all fake, but these fake evidence were so conclusive that it made one powerless to refute. That day in the throne room, the scenes of the past were like knives and chisels that were carved into her heart. That denouncing the Shen family was according to the length of time, day by day. Now it was the 69th year of the Ming Qi and she was reborn in the 68th year of the Ming Qi. In the things that Xin Yuan presented to Fu Xiu-yi, the criminal evidence must be something that happened in the 68th year of the Ming Qi or before. In the 68th year of Ming Qi, what crimes did the Shen family commit? Shen Miao closed her eyes and some scenes flashed through her mind. She was wearing the Empress court dress and the phoenix hairpins on her head could not hide the embarrassment around her. The civil and military officials were agitated, Pei Lang was indifferent and Fu Xiu-yi angrily threw the booklet at her face. A civil official was reading, in the 68th year of Ming Qi, the Shen family's officers and soldiers disobeyed the emperor's order and released the bandits, deceiving the monarch. Releasing the bandits without permission was deceiving the emperor. Shen Miao suddenly opened her eyes. She suddenly remembered that in the 68th year of Ming Qi, there was indeed a not a small matter that happened. Shen Xian went against the Shi Rong and defeated them, seizing 3 cities. Emperor Wenhui ordered that everyone in the cities be killed without mercy. To a general, massacring a city was the cruelest achievement. And in the Shi Rong city, other than the soldiers, most of the people were the elderly, the weak, women and children. These old and weak women and children were like the common people of Ming Qi, safe and sound, and the ones at fault were the Shi Rong soldiers. Shen Xian was not a person who liked to kill, thus in private, he left the lives of those women and children. Other than the Shin family's army, no one else knew about this matter, and the people of the Shin family's army were brought up by Shin Xian, so it was impossible for them to betray Shin Xian. In this, there should be Shin Yuan's credit. Perhaps a long time ago, Shin Yuan had buried a hidden chess piece in the Shin family's army. It was just that after the crown prince was deposed, the entire Shin family's crimes were pursued one by one, and this crime of deceiving the monarch was not that important. However, in the hands of Fu Xiaoyi, who had always been steady, to take it out at this time when the time was not ripe, it could only mean that the current situation made Fu Xiaoyi feel a crisis, and the Shin family had become a variable. In this lifetime, because there was no entanglement between her and Fu Xiaoyi did not stop Emperor Wenhui to let the Shin family stay for a few more years, and the imperial family finally had their eyes on the Shin family, this fat meat. Chapter 385. So the evidence that Shin Yuan handed over to Fu Xiaoyi should be the crime of Shin Xian not acting according to Emperor Wenhui's order to massacre the city. This matter could be said to be big or small. It was just that in the current situation, the imperial family was bent on taking back the Shin family's military power, so how would they let go of this opportunity? Things had become extremely tricky. Shin Miao clenched her fists and slowly calmed her emotions. Now it was not the worst time yet. Even though the imperial family wanted to deal with the Shin family, they only wanted to recover the military power. To move against the Shin family at this time, it would inevitably cause dissatisfaction from the other aristocratic families. The Fu family was cunning and would not do that. What should be done at this time? The few people in the room looked at Shin Miao's changing expression and were puzzled in their hearts. But they saw Shin Miao suddenly standing up. She said, "I want to go out of the residence for a while." Ah! Gu Yu was surprised for a moment. Young lady, to leave the residence at this time would attract gossip. Something happened in the family and one's heart is depressed. How about finding a friend to relieve it? Shin Miao's eyes turned cold. Go. Mo Qing naturally had no objection to Shin Miao's decision. Moreover, in his heart, he was convinced by Shin Miao and knew that Shin Miao had her own way of doing things. At this moment, seeing Shin Miao like this, his heart calmed down a little and said, "This subordinate will go and arrange." Seeing Mo Qing like this, Jing Zhe and Gu Yu did not speak anymore and let Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang stay in the residence to wait for news while they went out with Shin Miao. Shin Miao's actions naturally caused the people in the residence to be surprised, and when someone came to probe, she only said that she was going to look for Feng and Ning. Feng and Ning and Shin Miao were considered as friends, so it was natural for Shin Miao to look for Feng and Ning to complain about the first household of the Shin family. Thus, no one stopped him. After leaving the residence, Mo Qing drove the carriage towards the Feng residence. After driving past the small alley and confirming that no one was following, Shin Miao then said, "Go to the Su residence." Su residence? Gu Yu was surprised for a moment. Which Su residence? Ping Nan Count's Su family, Suyu residence. Mo Qing, who was outside, was very familiar with the roads in the Ding capital and was even more clear about which noble residences were located. He did not need to ask for directions and turned the horse around to head in another direction. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu wanted to ask but did not dare to. It was true that Shin Miao had an idea. But even they, as servants, knew that in the Shin family's court, the Xie family was one of the political enemies and the Marquis of Lin and Xie family and the Count of Ping Nan's Su family were grasshoppers on the same boat. Naturally, the Su family and the Shin family were like fire and water. Now that the Shin family was in trouble, why would they help their sworn enemy? But, he probably wasn't asking for help. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu anxiously thought. In the residence of the Count of Ping Nan, there was still one person sitting in Su Mingfeng's room. That person's purple gold robe was overflowing with color and there was a casual and lazy smile on his face. On the contrary, it was Su Mingfeng who had an anxious face. What is going on? Why did you ask to be the commander? The Ding capital is too boring. Go to the northern Jiang to play. Xie Jingxing said. Play. Su Mingfeng looked at him and anger appeared on his usually cultured and refined face. Do you know what kind of place the northern Jiang is? Currently no one dares to confront the Xiongnu, so why are you going to join in the fun? Seeing that Xie Jingxing did not take his words to heart, Su Mingfeng slowed down his tone. I know that your heart is not happy that your father brought Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu into officialdom, but there is no need to use this method to vent. This matter is not a small matter and is not a child's play. Even though you are highly skilled in martial arts, the northern Jiang's terrain is complex and you have never been there before. Jingxing, you cannot go. Su Mingfeng. Xie Jingxing laughed. His Majesty had already given me the commander request. Do you think that I can still not go? Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment and a look of despair appeared on his face. The emperor's words were like gold and jade, so there was no reason to go back on it. With the commander request in his hands, there was no leeway at this time. Even if Xie Jingxing changed his mind, he would still have to go. Chapter 386. Seeing Su Mingfeng like this, Xie Jingxing said, "Are you cursing me to have an accident or curse me to have an accident? Bastard!" Su Mingfeng scolded and was somewhat angry. Why did you not discuss this matter with me? What's the point of discussing it with you? Xie Jingxing took the teapot at the side and poured some tea for himself to drink. It is not bad for me. You. Su Mingfeng was angry but helpless at the same time. She knew that Xie Jingxing had a lawless temperament and once he decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull him back. It was said that they were childhood friends, but now it seemed that it was as if his head was hot. Xie Jingxing did not tell him anything, and even if he did, it was only a notice. For example, right now, he was just here to inform him that he had obtained the commander's token. Once the time was up, he would set off. Why do you want to go to the northern Jiang? Su Mingfeng paced back and forth in the room. Do you not want to live anymore? Do you know that if you win, it'll be great, but if you lose, your 2 Shu younger brothers would be the first to clap their hands. Su Mingfeng suddenly clapped his hands and stood in front of Xie Jingxing. You are assured to leave them in the Ding capital? You are not afraid of what your father would say? Speaking till here, she suddenly paused and looked at Xie Jingxing. Does your father know about this matter? Xie Jingxing shook his head. Look. Su Mingfeng said, you are so willful and Marquis Xie would definitely be furious when he knows about it. At that time, your 2 Shu younger brothers would stir up some gossip and there is still a hidden yin-yang in the residence. When you return from the northern Jiang, who knows what would happen to the residence? Xie Jingxing, are you really assured? Su Mingfeng treated Xie Jingxing as a real friend and his words were all for Xie Jingxing's sake. Xie Jingxing smiled and looked as if he did not want to talk about it anymore. When I leave the capital, help me look after the princess residence. In the Ding capital, other than the Su family, Xie Jingxing had the most interactions with Princess Rong Xian of the princess residence. Going to the northern borderline now would take at least a year and a half, but at worst, he did not know when he would be able to return. If Princess Rong Xian knew about it, she would definitely be sentimental. Su Mingfeng wanted to scold Xie Jingxing a few more words but seeing that Xie Jingxing's expression sank, it was not good to say anything more. One heard Xie Jingxing said again, within these 2 years, it is best for the Su family to avoid the spotlight. You do not enter officialdom and just pretend to be ill. Huh? Su Mingfeng felt strange. What does this have to do with me? Didn't you say that as long as I become an official and don't meddle in military affairs, it would be fine? Just do what I tell you to do. Xie Jingxing glanced at him and stood up. I am leaving. Hey. Su Mingfeng said, You are leaving just like this? What are you doing here today? Goodbye. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders but suddenly heard a putong sound at the door. Su Mingfeng jumped in shock when he opened the door and a round dumpling rolled in. The dumpling was round and chubby. Su Mingfeng helped him up and patted the dust on Tuanzi's clothes before saying, Ming Lang, why did you come over? The chubby dumpling was not anyone else but the second young master of the Su family, Su Ming Lang. He saw that there was someone else in the room and this person was Xie Jingxing. He first shrunk back in fright before hiding behind Su Mingfeng's back and pulled the corner of Su Mingfeng's clothes. Eldest brother, older sister of the Shen family is here. What? Su Mingfeng did not understand what was going on and saw his substitute servant running over at the door, panting, Young master, there is a young lady looking for you at the residence's entrance. When the words were said, Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment before looking at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Su Mingfeng coughed lightly, nonsense. How would I know any young lady? Chapter 387. It is true. That servant hurriedly said, It is said that it is the fifth young lady of the formidable great general's residence and is looking for you to discuss something. Fifth young lady of the formidable great general's residence. Su Mingfeng was still sorting out this tongue twister when Su Ming Lang at the side had already jumped up. It is older sister Shen Miao. Eldest brother, older sister Shen Miao is looking for you. Shen Miao. Su Mingfeng was stunned for a moment and Xie Jingxing frowned. Not to mention the Shen and Xie family, they had no dealings with the Su family. As for privately, Su Mingfeng and Shen Miao did not have any friendship. Shen Miao suddenly came to the door and Su Mingfeng was also confused. He asked Xie Jingxing, could it be that? She is here to look for you. Older sister Shen Miao is definitely here to look for me. Su Ming Lang happily held his face, eldest brother, let us go and see older sister Shen Miao. This. Su Mingfeng hesitated. Go. Xie Jingxing suddenly opened his mouth and his gaze seemed to have a deeper meaning, just in your room. When Shen Miao brought Mo Qing into Su Mingfeng's room, she just happened to see Su Mingfeng's servant bringing Su Ming Lang out. The snow-white glutinous rice dumplings struggled to fiddle with it but it was futile at the end. When he saw her, his eyes lit up and he excitedly waved his short hands, older sister Shen. Shen Miao stopped by his side and revealed a rare smile as she touched his head, why are you here? Eldest brother did not let me in. Su Ming Lang put on a long face, older sister Shen, are you here to see me? The servant at the side coughed lightly and smiled apologetically at Shen Miao. Sorry young lady Shen, young master is waiting for you inside. This was to cover up Su Ming Lang's words. Su Ming Lang was obviously very dissatisfied as he looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao smiled, I am here to look for your eldest brother to discuss some matters. Next time I will come to see you, I will bring you some sweet cakes to eat. Hearing that, Su Ming Lang immediately became happy and no longer struggled. He carefully instructed Shen Miao not to forget the agreement before leaving happily with the servant. Mo Qing who was following behind was somewhat surprised. Shen Miao was not a patient and kind person to strangers and just now she treated Su Ming Lang with a good temper. If one did not know, one would think that Su Ming Lang was her son. Just as this strange conjecture appeared, it was suppressed by Mo Qing. Not to mention that the age difference between Shen Miao and Su Ming Lang was not that big, moreover Shen Miao was a young lady now so how would there be a mother? Shen Miao pushed the door open and walked in. In the room, there was only Su Mingfeng sitting alone in front of a small table. Seeing Shen Miao entering and even bringing along Mo Qing, he was first startled but did not stop her and allowed her to enter the room. The servant hurriedly closed the door. Mo Qing stood in front of the door and did not move, in case there were any accidents. Shen Miao walked straight to the opposite of Su Mingfeng and sat down. When she did all these, her entire person seemed incomparably natural. If it was in her own residence, of course there would be no problem. But this was her first time coming to the residence and before this, she did not even have any interaction with Su Mingfeng. To be so calm in the face of a stranger, Su Mingfeng could not help but cast sidelong glances. Shen Miao was also sizing Su Mingfeng up. In all fairness, Su Mingfeng was a handsome youth. It was just that standing in front of Xia Jingxing, who was like a scorching sun, the brilliance was more or less overshadowed. In fact, Shen Miao knew that Su Mingfeng was not an ordinary son of an official and had some abilities. It was a pity that at the end the Su family was completely destroyed because of the matter of selling soldiers and horses. Su Mingfeng also lost his life in that disaster, and at the end the Su father and son's corpses were personally collected by Xia Jingxing. The relationship between the Su family and the Xia family could be seen. Chapter 388. It was because of this that the Su family and the Shen family did not have much contact. Su Mingfeng felt somewhat uncomfortable being probed by Shen Miao's gaze and lightly coughed. "Shen young lady, one do not know the reason for coming to the residence. My father, mother and eldest brother were summoned to the palace by His Majesty. Does young Master Su know why?" Shen Miao asked. Su Mingfeng was somewhat inexplicable. The matter of the Shen family had spread throughout the entire Ding capital early in the morning, and all the officials felt insecure. After all, as an official in court, once there was a little bit of trouble, it would be a huge matter. But what did the Shen family's mishap have to do with his Su family? "I do not know," Su Mingfeng answered. He really did not know what was the reason why Shen Xian was summoned to the palace. Everyone guessed that it was Emperor Wen Hui who wanted to punish the Shen family, but no one knew what the charges were. "When my father was in the northwest region destroying the Shirong, His Majesty ordered a massacre, but my father did not comply." Shen Miao said, "So one think that His Majesty will punish my father for deceiving the monarch and disobeying military orders." Su Mingfeng jumped in shock. It was not because of the charges that Shen Miao said, but because Shen Miao told him about it so easily. This matter could be considered as a handle in anyone's hands, and it was too late to cover it up, but Shen Miao actually told him so bluntly. Even though Su Mingfeng was intelligent since young, he did not know how to continue and could only laugh dryly twice before saying perfunctorily, "Ah, then what can be done? So I want to ask Heir Su for help," Shen Miao said. Su Mingfeng was once again stunned. He thought about it and could not think of what kind of friendship did he have with Shen Miao, or what kind of friendship did the Shen and Su family had that was worth the Su family lending a helping hand. In a situation where he could not figure it out, Su Mingfeng secretly glanced at the folding screen. "Shen young lady is joking." He quickly retracted his gaze and looked at Shen Miao before smiling politely. "It is just that what help can this one offer? Most likely Shen young lady has overestimated this one. Moreover, forgive this one for speaking rudely. This matter is complicated, and if one were to randomly help, one fear that one would invite trouble to oneself. One really cannot find a reason to bear the danger and be a good person." Su Mingfeng's words were said in a polite manner but mercilessly rejected Shen Miao's request. Su Mingfeng also saw it clearly that the Shen Miao in front of him had a straightforward temperament. He simply abandoned his usual roundabout ways and straightforwardly stated, "No." Hearing this, Shen Miao gently smiled. When she smiled, her pair of eyes were very clear, and there seemed to be some naivety. However, in the blink of an eye, her smile turned cold. She said, "Prince Su, although you are not an official, your father seems to be in charge of the military horses." Su Mingfeng slightly frowned and said, "Correct." "Did your father tell heir that there seems to be a problem with the military horses?" Shen Miao said. This time Su Mingfeng's brows wrinkled even tighter as he stared at Shen Miao. "What does Shen young lady mean by this?" Shen Miao smiled gently. "I heard that there are some small problems with the military horses recently, and a few of the military horses are sick. Medicine is ineffective." Su Mingfeng tightened his grip on the teacup. Shen Miao's words were not false. These days Su Yu was extremely busy with this matter, and other than a few subordinates in the military horses and Su Yu who secretly told him about it, no one else knew about it. But it was impossible for the people in the military horses to tell Shen Miao. If it were to spread, Emperor Wen Hui would punish them and everyone would not be able to bear the consequences and it would be even worse. But how did Shen Miao know about it? Su Mingfeng heard his own dry voice, "Shen young lady. Where did you hear these false words from?" Chapter 389. Untruthful Words. Shen Miao sighed, but there seemed to be a slight smile in her eyes. She got close to Su Mingfeng and whispered, "Could it be that Heir Su is not afraid that this horse disease will eventually become a horse plague?" Su Mingfeng's pupils suddenly widened. Horse plague. With the Count of Ping Nan's cautious temperament and having dealt with military horses for a lifetime, it is impossible for him not to suspect this. Shen Miao pretended to be surprised. Why? Was it not told to Heir Su? Su Mingfeng gritted his teeth and did not speak. Su Yu did not tell him. Naturally, Su Yu had told him that the horse disease that no medicine could cure was a precursor to the horse plague. A military horse needed a lot of money to feed, and once the horse plague broke out, the military horses would suffer heavy casualties. Not only was there a loss of money, on the battlefield, without sufficient military horses, the army would not be able to fight at all. If the blame came down from the top, a light punishment would be losing one's black hat and a heavy punishment would be losing one's head. It was just that this horse disease came in a strange and tricky manner. Many veterinarians were found, but there was no solution. Recently, they had no choice but to separate the sick horses, but there were still horses dying intermittently. If at the end it was uncontrollable and it really became a horse plague, one feared that it would be a big disaster. "Shen young lady, what is your opinion?" Su Mingfeng said bitterly, but as he spoke, he glanced at the screen without revealing anything. At this moment Shen Miao was not anxious. She grabbed an empty teacup on the table and poured a cup of tea for herself before taking a sip. When Su Mingfeng saw it, he wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, he swallowed it down and pretended to be listening attentively. "I have a way to solve your horses," Shen Miao said. Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment. "Is this true?" Fortunately a veterinarian with superior skills and heard that he had solved the same horse disease. Once he is found, the death of the military horses can be easily solved. Su Mingfeng did not speak. Shen Miao picked up the teacup and took another sip before lightly saying, "It is not too late to mend the pen after the sheep is lost. Heir Su, when the horse disease spreads and cannot be concealed, it would not only be the horses that suffer." Su Mingfeng gritted his teeth and looked at Shen Miao. "Shen young lady specially sent a good strategy today, one fear that there is something else to say." His eyes flashed. "Or perhaps you think that my Su family has a good plan to help the Shen family? Please tell me." "Straightforward," Shen Miao praised. Su Mingfeng smiled bitterly. How was it that he was refreshed? It was obviously Shen Miao who was cunning. Previously he had said that the Su family had no obligation to wade into these muddy waters to help Shen Xian, so Shen Miao directly stated the terms of the transaction. It had to be said that Shen Miao was a person who knew how to grasp people's weaknesses. She took the matter of the military horses that the Su family was most worried about. This matter had not been spread and even he and Su Yu spoke about it in private, so he did not know how Shen Miao knew about it. No matter what, he couldn't refuse such a condition. It was no wonder that Shen Miao did not please him and spoke so directly. She simply had a trump card in her hands. A deal was a deal. No one could take advantage of the other. "I know that Count Pingnan knows many people in the imperial court. Compared to my parents who are always in the northwest, Count Pingnan's influence is much wider. I would like to ask Count Pingnan's help to gather all the friends and help my father to submit a memorial." "Submit a memorial?" Su Mingfeng's brows wrinkled, all to plead for General Shen. Shen Miao shook her head. "No. All blame my father." Su Mingfeng was stunned. One think that Count Pingnan would not be willing to wade into these muddy waters. Shen Miao gently smiled. "So how to persuade Count Pingnan will be handed over to Heir Su. It is just that Heir Su must not tell Count Pingnan about the matter of the military horses and must not mention me, otherwise this transaction will be over. Su Mingfeng did not understand. He looked up and saw that the young female in front of him still had the appearance of a young girl. Her brows were delicate and gentle, and when she smiled, there was some innocence and clarity, but when she did not smile, there was a coldness in her eyes which added a bit of majesty. And this kind of pressure was something that even Su Yu had never given Su Mingfeng this kind of feeling. I cannot stay for long. We'll have to trouble Heir Su to send a letter to my residence after making a decision. After the matter is done, I will definitely send it to the veterinarian's place. She stood up and bowed slightly to Su Mingfeng before saying, many thanks. Su Mingfeng quickly stood up and said, definitely. Shen Miao swept a glance at the screen before turning around and bringing Imo Qing out of the room. After Shen Miao left, Su Mingfeng then let out a sigh of relief. A person walked out from behind the screen. If it was not Xie Jingxing, who else could it be? You have heard it. Su Mingfeng said, this young lady of the Shen family is more unfathomable than imagined. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and did not speak. Su Mingfeng's gaze landed on the table where the teacup that Shen Miao drank from was still there. The rim of the cup was slightly wet. Speaking of which, that is what you drank from. Su Mingfeng said. You, Xie Jingxing unceremoniously kicked him with his leg. Chapter 390. Io. Su Mingfeng exclaimed, why did you kick me for? I also wanted to remind her just now, but she drank so fast, so what can I do? Su Mingfeng sized Xie Jingxing up, moreover, the one who suffered a loss is others and not you. What is there to haggle about? Xie Jingxing ignored him and sat down in front of the table before asking, is what she said about the troops true? Hearing that, Su Mingfeng's face became ugly, and under Xie Jingxing's sharp gaze, he said with difficulty, correct. Why did you hide it from me? Xie Jingxing asked in a threatening manner. Su Mingfeng shook his head and smiled bitterly, only father and I discussed this matter privately, and I did not speak of it to anyone else. It is even more impossible for father to do so. Who would joke about something that would cause one to lose one's black veil hat? I originally wanted to tell you after a period of time. But how would young Lady Shen know about this matter? Could it be that they have acquaintances in the military horses? But the people in the military horses would not speak about this matter. Xie Jingxing glanced at Su Mingfeng. Even though Su Mingfeng was a talented person, he was protected watertight in the Su family since young and had not experienced any big storms. Speaking of which, the trump cards in Shen Miao's hands were endless, and it was out of his expectations time and time again. Xie Jingxing gave Shen Miao a retreat strategy but did not expect that Shen Miao did not use his strategy at all. To unite with the Su family and other familiar officials to submit a memorial to Shen Xian and do the opposite, it could indeed solve Shen Xian's urgent situation. However, the emperor's mind was unfathomable, and if Shen Xian was let off this time, the Shen family's army would have great power, and one day the emperor would see it as a thorn in his eyes. One could hide for a while but not for a lifetime. It was just that. Did Shen Miao really not think of this layer? Xie Jingxing did not think so. Seeing that Xie Jingxing did not speak and his usually frivolous face had a frowning and pondering expression, Su Mingfeng also became nervous. He knew that even though this good friend looked casual, he understood the situation in court more thoroughly than anyone else. Su Mingfeng asked, why? Is there any problem? Xie Jingxing shook his head, what do you think? It is indeed highly possible for the horse disease to reach the horse plague. Moreover, this matter is of great importance, and father is the commander in charge of the military horses. Once something happens, the Su family will be the first to bear the brunt. Su Mingfeng said, if Shen young lady really did not lie to me, I think that it is possible to try. Even though it is somewhat difficult to convince father, but I will try my best. Pausing, Su Mingfeng looked at Xie Jingxing, What do you think about this deal? Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. The biggest winner of the transaction is definitely not you, but you also did not suffer a loss. He looked at Su Mingfeng. Just do as she said. Su Mingfeng lowered his head and was somewhat hesitant, but to jointly impeach Shin Xian, she is not afraid of overreaching herself. Did you not discover? Xie Jingxing said with a smile that was not a smile. She understands the emperor's thoughts more clearly than you. Su Mingfeng did not speak but saw Xie Jingxing standing up. Su Mingfeng was stunned. Where are you going? Requesting the commander's order. Xie Jingxing returned to his previous lazy look. One must let the Marquis of Linen take a look. Outside the main doors of the Xie residence, Shin Miao put on her bamboo hat and asked Mo Qing, who was beside her, just now in Su Mingfeng's room, did you feel that there was anyone else? Mo Qing was startled. One did not feel that there was anyone else present. Did young lady discover something? Shin Miao shook her head. Mo Qing's martial arts skills were outstanding and even he did not discover that there was anyone in the room, so there should be no one else. It was just that. Shin Miao felt somewhat strange in her heart. Why did Su Mingfeng keep glancing at the screen? Even though she did not have any martial arts skills, her ability to observe and observe was at the point of perfection. It was more than enough to deal with Su Mingfeng, this kind of immature youth. Chapter 391. Now that he thought about it, the two teacups on the table were a little strange. Shin Miao shook her head and threw the messy thoughts to the back of her mind. No matter if there was anyone behind the screen or who it was, she had already said what she wanted to say to Su Mingfeng, and with her understanding of Su Mingfeng, this matter should be successful. After sitting in the carriage, Guyu asked, young lady, will eldest young master Su help master and Furen? Jingzhe and Guyu were outside and did not know what Shin Miao and Su Mingfeng were talking about and only thought that Shin Miao was asking Su Mingfeng for help. However, the relationship between the Su family and the Shin family had always been like that, so he was somewhat worried. Shin Miao nodded her head, I will. In his previous life, the entire Su clan was beheaded because of secretly selling soldiers and horses. Although they were still part of the Tian clan, they couldn't tolerate the Count of Ping Nan, an established aristocratic family, but they still had to put on a good show. Other than the evidence of selling military horses, there was another matter that was also recorded as a crime. At the beginning of the 69th year of Ming Qi, the military horses that the Count of Ping Nan, Su Yu, was in charge of had an illness and even caused a small horse plague. It was just that the Count of Ping Nan found a veterinarian from the countryside to control the epidemic. Other than the confidants of the military horses, no one else knew about it. Therefore, no one knew about it. Later on, when Count Ping Nan's property was confiscated, this matter was also exposed. Shin Miao was still the Empress and had carefully looked through the dossier on the Count of Ping Nan's crimes, thus she knew where the veterinarian was staying. In fact, even if Shin Miao did not look for Su Mingfeng today, Su Yu would be able to find the vet to control the epidemic when Xiao Bo's horse plague spread. The reason why Shin Miao did not let Su Mingfeng tell Su Yu about this matter was to make use of the time difference. Su Mingfeng used other reasons to request Su Yu to submit the memorial, and she also used this condition, which was just right. It's just that. Shin Miao's face sunk. Before Shin Yuan died, he had given the evidence of the Shin family defying the emperor's orders to Fu Xiuyi, so it was definitely not complete. Fu Xiuyi actually started to deal with the Shin family now, and this made Shin Miao feel a trace of nervousness. The current her did not have a complete trump card to contend against Fu Xiuyi. The time was not ripe and there was no opportunity, but it really answered to Xie Jingxing's words, retreat. However, how to retreat was also a problem. To retreat was to retreat, and to retreat in order to advance was also to retreat. What she should be worried about now was how to get out of this unscathed after arranging everything. Because she could not go out for too long and arouse suspicion, Shin Miao quickly returned to the Shin residence. In the Shin residence, everyone saw her return and thought that Shin Miao had complained to Feng and Ning. Shen Xian and Luo Shuayan did not show any signs of returning from the palace. Most likely Shen Gui and Shen Wan had said something, as the rest of the Shen family looked like they were watching a show. She was already used to the Shen family treating the first household as enemies, so Shen Miao did not even look at them and headed back to the western courtyard. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu thought that Shen Miao's mind was heavy tonight and would most likely sit in front of the table for the entire night like yesterday. Who knew that Shen Miao actually went to bed early after washing up, causing the few maids to look at each other in dismay and became more worried for Shen Miao. Shen Miao laid on the bed and looked at the 4 scented sachets hanging on the carved bedpost before slowly closing her eyes. She had done everything she could. The only thing she could do now was to wait. Wait for the Su family to unite with the other courtiers and wait for Emperor Wen Hui's suspicions to flare up. In the palace. In Shu Fang Palace. It was different from the other magnificent palaces, as Shu Fang Palace was considered simple. Even the decorations were just some flowers and plants or paintings. Consort Dong Shu was sitting on the soft couch listening to a tune. The one playing the tune was a young female with a round face and was not considered very beautiful, but the tune she played was rather lively. Consort Dong Shu listened with a smile. Consort Dong Shu was not considered very beautiful, and among the thousands of beauties, she seemed much more ordinary. Even though she was beautiful, she was gentle and did not have any temper. No wonder she was the most unremarkable of the 4 consorts. Chapter 392. At her side, there was a young man sitting. He was dressed in splendid clothes and had a handsome appearance. His temperament was somewhat cold, but the smile on his face seemed to be somewhat cordial. He said to Consort Dong Shu, "This song is played well." This person was not anyone else but Consort Dong Shu's son, the 9th prince, Prince Ding, Fu Xiu-yi. Consort Dong Shu smiled as she looked at Fu Xiu-yi and waved her hands. The person who was playing the song suddenly stopped. Consort Dong Shu smiled, "Played well. Take some money." The young lady who was playing the song had a flash of joy on her face and quickly carried the zither down. Everyone in Ming Qi's palace knew that the servants in Shu Fang Palace were the most comfortable, as Consort Dong Shu was a kind person and treated the servants very generously. For example, at this moment, one only needed to play a group and one would be able to get a generous reward. All withdraw. Consort Dong Shu swept a glance at the other palace people. When the palace people heard this, they also withdrew in a well-behaved manner. In a blink of an eye, there was only Consort Dong Shu and her son left in the middle of the palace. Consort mother's method of training the servants is getting better and better. Fu Xiu-yi smiled. It is better to show favors than to make enemies. Consort Dong Shu said with a smile, "How many times has Consort mother told you?" "Yes, yes, yes." Fu Xiu-yi sighed. Unfortunately, with this son's position, it is much easier to make enemies than to show favors. Hearing this, Consort Dong Shu's smile faded a little and asked, "These few days your imperial father is worried about the formidable great general's matter. Do you have confidence on your end?" Consort Dong Shu had never cared about Fu Xiu-yi's matters, as the inner palace should not interfere in politics. Moreover, Emperor Wen Hui had 9 sons and all of them were not easy to deal with. It was better to hide one's incompetence than to show one's incompetence. Now that the time was not clear, Consort Dong Shu was not afraid of being a disfavored consort. Imperial father is concerned about the matter and naturally would not lift it up heavily or drop it down lightly. Fu Xiu-yi said, "If I present the evidence, it will coincide with Imperial Father's intention and will only go smoothly. I know that you have an idea." Consort Dong Shu shook her head and said lightly, "But Xiaojiu, now the situation is tense, so you better be more careful. Do not claim credit and let them fight. It is not too late for you to take action after they are tired. This son will listen to Imperial Mother's teachings." Fu Xiu-yi quickly said. Consort Dong Shu smiled and suddenly thought of something. The last time Shen Furen brought Shen Miao into the palace, you told me not to let Shen Miao hear our conversation. What happened? The last time Luo Shuiyan and her mother entered the palace, Fu Xiuyi had instructed Consort Dong Shu not to let Shen Miao be present. Afterwards Consort Dong Shu let Tong Yao bring Shen Miao out. What kind of person does Lady Mother think 5th Shen young lady is? Fu Xiuyi asked. Her looks are not bad. She should be a beauty in the future. However, his personality is too gentle, so he is probably easily bullied. Consort Dong Shu looked at Fu Xiuyi, previously heard that she was in love with you, but she does not seem to be as unbearable as the rumors say. Although she is not intelligent enough, she is not to the point of being an idiot. Fu Xiuyi smiled faintly. Imperial Mother is such a picky person, yet you can't say anything bad about her? Consort Dong Shu was surprised for a moment. She looked generous on the surface, but in her heart she was a very picky person. Because Fu Xiuyi had reached the age to look at a Furen and he was not bad himself. There were also high-ranking families outside that wanted to marry their daughters over. There were naturally a lot of virtuous females, but Consort Dong Shu could always pick out faults and felt that others were not worthy of her son. And in these words, even though she did not praise Shen Miao, there was no contempt in her words. If one thought about it carefully, there was even some bias towards Shen Miao. Among the young ladies of official families, it was the first time that Consort Dong Shu evaluated a person so generously. Chapter 393. So when Fu Xiuyi reminded her, Consort Dong Shu was also stunned. She was obviously an ordinary young lady, how could she not say anything bad about her? But other than being a little dull, one really did not know what was wrong with her. No desire, no ambition, and her eyes were as calm as a married woman. Consort Dong Shu's heart jumped. This and herself. Or rather her disguised self, was it not exactly the same? Consort Mother can also see it. Fu Xiuyi smiled, this Shen young lady is a hidden expert. Consort Dong Shu looked at Fu Xiuyi in puzzlement, you say that she is pretending? At such a young age, one can pretend other things but one's temper cannot be controlled. Consort Mother. A strange light flashed in Fu Xiuyi's eyes, I have seen her make a fool of herself in public and also saw her shameless expression of love. She was filled with killing intent on the drill ground and shot 3 arrows at the Kai family's gentleman until he could not get off the stage. Now you have seen her silly and dull look. Consort Mother think that with so many looks, which one is the real her? Consort Dong Shu's hand that was holding the teacup paused. How could a person have thousands of looks and each look was lifelike and each look was like one's own temperament? That disguise was too scary. What was even scarier was that she had just reached marriageable age. Fu Xiuyi lowered his head. What he did not say was that at the palace banquet, Shen Miao looked at him with uncontrollable hatred in her eyes. That kind of hatred that went deep into the bone marrow was not the hatred that a young daughter would have when she could not love. That kind of hatred was like one's soul was trembling in anger and could not wait to tear him apart. There were many points that made one puzzled. Consort Mother, leaving the Shen family is also a variable. The current state of the country cannot be changed anymore. Fu Xiuyi lowered his voice, young lady of the Shen family, it is not as simple as we think. To cut the weeds, one must eliminate the roots and it would be best to end it before it starts. So this time the formidable great general cannot escape from this calamity? Consort Dong Shu asked. That is not so. Fu Xiuyi smiled, the Shen family is now the head of the aristocratic families and if the Shen family is removed, it would only cause more variables. But after taking over the Shen family's power, the Shen family would gradually decline and when the time is ripe, one can catch them all in one fell swoop. What if there is any change in the middle? Consort Dong Shu looked at him, the Shen family might have other trump cards, so what if they can safely pass through? If they find out that it was you who submitted the memorial, I'm afraid you'll be implicated. Fu Xiaoyi shook his head. It was clearly a friendly smile, but his eyes were ruthless, deceiving the sovereign and disobeying his superiors. This crime is already very big. No matter how powerful he is, he can't let the Shen family retreat. It's just that. He lightly said, this was originally a test of mine. Probe. Consort Dong Shu was somewhat puzzled. Fu Xiaoyi looked at his fingertips, that's right. Previously when Shen Yuan asked him to pay attention to Shen Miao, Fu Xiaoyi did not take it to heart. But after a series of things, including the extermination of Prince Yu residents and Shen Yuan's death, it made him gradually realize that what Shen Yuan said might be true. Shen Miao was an unmarried daughter and no matter what, she would not be able to do such a big thing. There was only one possibility, there was someone behind Shen Miao. The person behind her was so capable that Fu Xiaoyi had no choice but to be on guard. This time something happened to the Shen family and only Shen Miao was left behind. Naturally it was his suggestion to Emperor Wenhui. It was just that Fu Xiaoyi's aim was to see how this fifth Shen young lady of the Shen family, who had hidden so deeply that even he was played in the palm of her hands, would use any method to solve the problem. Who was her helper? But no matter what method was used, Shen Xian would not be able to retreat safely. Fu Xiaoyi clenched his fists. How could one spit out the fat meat that was in his mouth? Chapter 394. There was no doubt in the history books that the Shen family was destined to perish in Mingqi. Tonight in the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, it was not peaceful. In the innermost courtyard, in the room, Xia Jingxing took off his outer robe and the door opened with a pa sound. The servant trembled as he stood at the door, afraid that he would implicate himself as he lowered his head and said, "Young master." This lowly one could not stop. The Marquis of Lineage, Xia Ding, stood at the door and was even angrier when he heard it. "Stop? Try and stop me. I am your father." When did the master of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage change? Xia Jingxing, stand properly for me. Xia Jingxing casually swept a glance at Xia Ding and lazily threw his robe on the couch. He sat down on the chair and leaned back, putting on an air of a hedonistic son of rich parents. What is the matter for the Marquis to come here in the middle of the night? It was as if he was treating a stranger. Xia Ding was naturally angered to the point that he was in a complete mess. It was Xia Changwu and Xia Changchao who were following behind Xia Ding who revealed a look of indignation. But if one looked carefully, there was a glint in their eyes. Xia Changchao said, "Eldest brother, father usually do his best for you. How can you speak to father like this? There is no etiquette. None of your business." Xia Jingxing spat out 4 words. Outside, the elegant, noble and arrogant little Marquis Xia was like a ruffian every time he faced Xia Ding and the other two. This made Xia Ding, who was a self-proclaimed, scholarly general, feel helpless. "Brat." Xia Ding did not notice Xia Changchao's livid face and said angrily, "What kind of commander request are you writing?" He slapped the paper in his hand and threw it at Xia Jingxing's face. Xia Jingxing took a look at the paper and raised his eyebrows. "If the Marquis is not satisfied, let His Majesty write another one. Coming here in the middle of the night without sleeping is for this matter." "Xia Jingxing, what exactly do you want to do?" Xia Ding flew into a rage. "Do you know what kind of place the northern border is? The commander request is not a joke. You have never commanded the Xia family army before and I have never taught you before. Do you know how to use them?" When the words were said, Xia Changchao and Xia Changwu's eyes flashed with a trace of darkness. The Xia family army was the most valuable asset of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage and was more valuable than the wealth and glory of the Marquis of Lineage. Xia Changwu and Xia Changchao also practiced martial arts, but Xia Ding never had the intention to let the two brothers take over the Xia family army, but groomed Xia Jingxing as the successor of the Xia family army. Even if Xia Ding brought the two brothers into officialdom, but once Xia Jingxing really used the Xia family army for himself, even if Xie Chang Chao and Xie Chang Wu struggled for a lifetime, it would be hard to reach Xie Jingxing's height. So what? Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile. His eyes swept across the place and there was actually a little bit of evil in them. After using it a lot, it becomes more convenient. No. Xie Ding flatly refused. Come with me to the imperial court tomorrow and make it clear to His Majesty that this commander-in-chief request cannot be accepted. Marquis. Xie Jingxing tilted his head and looked at him, as if he was watching a joke. The commander-in-chief request was requested by me, and if I renege on it with His Majesty. If the Marquis wants to see me lose my head, just say it directly. There is no need to learn from others to beat around the bush. When he finished speaking, he looked at Xie Changwu and Xie Changwu with a smile that was not a smile. It was clearly saying that Xie Changwu and Xie Chang Chao did not have good intentions. Both of their expressions stiffened and Xie Changwu said, "Eldest brother, father also has good intentions." The terrain of the northern Jiang is complicated, and if something were to happen, not only your own safety would be difficult to predict, even father would be punished and the entire Xie family army would be shamed. You cannot only think about being in the limelight and not care about the future of the Xie family. The meaning behind his words was that Xie Jingxing was completely biting off more than he could chew and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He wanted to establish a career but did not know how much weight he had and would only be shamed if he went out. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.